Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Deku Never Had the Chance to Make a Choice. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Summary. I'm sorry. Those were nearly the only words Midoriya Izuku could remember his mother saying. Why? He didn't know. What was she apologizing for? He didn't understand. He didn't until he was the one needing to apologize. After his mother died as a civilian casualty of a villain capture, 3 years old Midoriya Izuku's life started going down the drain. In his entire life, he was always told that everyone had a choice. So, how come he didn't have a one? How come he had to go down a path he never wanted to? Notes. This my first time trying to write a fanfic, so please go easy on me. I have no proofreader, so there might be a few mistakes, even more so taking into account that I've only studied English for about 4 years. I think my level of English is pretty good, so it should still be readable. Before anyone asks, I live to make the characters I like suffer, so yeah, you could call me a sadist, but that's besides the point. This fic is all about making Izuku suffer and then finally get a happy end, probably smirk. I'm gonna try to put down TW, but I can't promise that they'll all be there, so if anyone sees that one is missing, please do tell me. TW child abuse, violent violence, death. Enjoy sadistic giggle. See the end of the work for more notes. Chapter 1. Chapter text. I'm sorry. Those are the words Izuku associated with his mother the most. When he was young, his mother would hug him while crying. She would repeat those words again and again, non-stop. She would do the same when Izuku was hiding in the closet. Nearly every day, after hearing his father coming home, she would gently put him in his hiding spot. She would tell him to stay there until she came to get him. Izuku could hear the screams, the noise of things crashing and breaking on the ground. Once again, he would hear his mother begging for forgiveness. The young child wasn't dumb, but he simply couldn't understand what she was so sorry for. He couldn't understand why she wouldn't stop seeking for forgiveness, be it from him or his father. He simply couldn't understand. What he did understand, though, was that when his mother told him he should never, ever talk about what he heard to someone else, not even Auntie Mitsuki or Kaken, she was deadly serious. She told him that if he ever were to do so, a really bad person would come to get him, and he would never get to see her again. She may have told him so in a really childish way, but Izuku knew she had never been more serious. Of course, even as a kid, Izuku knew that his family wasn't a normal one, that his situation couldn't be described as a good one. It would be more difficult not to after watching how things went at the Bakugo household. Yes, they shouted a lot, so much so that Izuku didn't even know if they could be considered normal, but the way they did was different from the way his father yelled. While they did make a lot of noise, he could still feel it, that they loved each other a lot. So when he said he knew that their family isn't normal, he meant it. He knew it wasn't normal that his mother was covered in bruises and cuts. He knew it wasn't normal, but he couldn't do anything to stop it. You may call him a coward for hiding while his mother got beaten, for not trying to do anything to help her. However, he knew that the best option to help her was to do nothing even while she was being hurt. What a good future hero he was, right? Only standing by and doing nothing while his most beloved person was suffering. He knew he shouldn't have, rationally speaking knew it was best for them if he did nothing. However, rationality could only do so much for a 3-year-old who dreamed of becoming a hero. Before he could even think about what he was doing, he ran out the closet and stood between his mother, who was barely conscious at the moment, and his father. The man that stood before him glared at the little boy as if he were going to burn him to ashes. Before he could even utter a single word, the boy opened his mouth and started shouting, "Stop hitting mommy, please, I'm begging you." Tears were spilling out of round emerald eyes. They were filled with fear. Fear for his life? Fear for his mother's? Fear of the man before him? He didn't know. What he did know, thought, was that he needed to protect his mom. After all, what kind of hero would he be if he didn't? Don't get him wrong, he was scared, so much so that he was trembling all over, but he needed to do this. Just as his mother had always been there to protect and comfort him, he would do the same. This time, without interruption, his father began to speak, flames licking his lips. Izuku, get out of the way if you don't want to end up like her. The sheer anger in his voice sent a chill down his spine. Izuku couldn't even form words. He was so overridden with fear that he even forgot how to speak, how to breathe. He had never felt so threatened in his entire life. However, he couldn't back down now. His mom had already suffered enough, and he couldn't just leave her at his mercy. He had to get it together and save her, no matter the cost. It took all the courage he had to face his father, know that monster properly, to look him in the eyes and open his mouth. And no. Although he was stuttering, his eyes showed nothing but determination to save his mother. That was all it took for the man in front of him to snap. Izuku knew, although he had never been hit before, he knew that it would hurt a lot. However, he wasn't aware that it would hurt this much. He felt as if all the air in his lung was pushed out as he was kicked in the stomach by the monster in front of him. He wanted to throw up, barely being able to grasp for air before being kicked again and again, over and over again. The man looked at him with a satisfied and accomplished smile on his face. He started to speak, with a smirk on his lips. See what you get for trying to defy me. Next time it will be even worse, so I think it would be good for you to be on your best behavior in front of me. It felt as though he was happy to have finally been able to hit someone besides Inko, who was currently lying on the ground next to him. Now that Izuku was finally able to catch a breath, after being relentlessly hit by that monster he once called his father, albeit having a fuzzy mind, he could hear his mother whimpering beside him, probably trying to move towards him. He hurt all over, the only place clear of bruises and cuts being his face. However, he couldn't bring himself to regret doing what he did. After all, he was finally able to protect her. That was what heroes did, wasn't it? Not long after, his vision became blurry, and he could barely keep his eyes open. Oh, he was probably fainting, not good. He still needed to take care of his moth. He slowly opened his eyes, his throat dry. He was lying in bed, sore and hurting all over, but it didn't seem like anything was broken or out of place. As such, hurriedly got out of bed, worrying about his mother. When he opened his door, however, a scent he hadn't smelled in months greeted him. That's right, his mother made him pancakes. Quickly forgetting the events that happened the previous evening, he ran down the stairs as quickly as his body would allow him to. What awaited him was his mother in front of the stove smiling at him. She waved him over and handed him a plate full of pancakes. The ones she made were always the best, before sitting down in front of him with a serious expression on her face. As tears started flooding her eyes, she began speaking. Izuku dear, please never do what you did yesterday again. Please, I'm begging you, never do it again. You got lucky this time, but what about the next? If you end up seriously injured or worse, I don't know what I would do if I were to lose you. That's why, Izuku, please never do something like this again. I won't be able to handle it if anything bad were to happen. The despair in her voice shattered Izuku's heart. He should have known better than to do this to her. After all, he was the one who caused her to feel that way. He was the one who made this sad. Before he could do anything to stop them, tears were wetting the boy's freckled cheeks. He quickly stood up and pulled his mother into a hug. After spending a minute in her warm embrace, he started speaking. I'm sorry, Mom, I won't ever do it again. I just couldn't stand by and watch him hit you anymore. I really thought you were going to die. This in turn broke Inko's heart as well. Hearing her little baby sob and say he thought that she was going to die, it was heart-wrenching. I'm sorry, Izu. I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. I'm so sorry. As she said those words, her voice was trembling, broken, and choked up. They both continued crying and basking in each other's warmth for a few minutes. After they finished crying, Inko spoke up again, smiling. All right, Izu, do you want to go to daycare, or should I call so that you can take a day off like me? Izuku, though hard about it, on one hand, he still wanted to play with Kaken, but on the other hand, he didn't want to leave his mother alone. What a dilemma. As if reading his mind, Inko told him not worry about her and only think about what he wanted to do. He decided that he would go to daycare. Little did he know that this may have been the worst decision he has ever made. It was strange. Why wasn't his mother coming to pick him up? She should have already been here over an hour ago. Izuku had a bad feeling, a really bad one. This had never happened before. She had never been late before. No, something must be wrong. Fortunately, they didn't live far away from his daycare, probably about 5 minutes. He could go home alone with no problem whatsoever. However, he was pretty sure his teacher wouldn't think the same. Izuku decided to sneak out. Sure, he was usually a good boy who avoided any and all trouble. That must be why she let him roam around more freely than the others, but today was an exception. He felt as though something really bad might have happened, and add to the fact that his mother, who was never late to pick him up, was today. He couldn't sit still and wait anymore. He would face the consequences later. He ran as fast as he could, as if his depended on it. He just knew. He knew something bad was bound to happen. He could already feel tears building up in his eyes, and to his despair, he was right. Something did happen. Even when he was far away, he could see the smoke in the sky, but still, it might be coming from somewhere else, right? It could be coming from another house, right? His hope, however, was crushed the moment he arrived at his destination. His house was engulfed by flames. He could see it despite the people who were cratered in front of him. It was as if he could hear his mother's screams of pain whenever that man would burn her. Although it was impossible considering the cheer noise the crowd and firefighters were making while trying to put out the fire. Izuku fell to his knees. He wanted to keep hope. He really wanted to keep hope that his mother was alive, that she wasn't in the apartment when the fire started. He wanted to believe that she was still there, that nothing happened to her, or that she was rescued by a passing hero. He really wanted to, but he couldn't. It was as if voices in his skull were screaming at him, telling that she was dead, and that it was his fault, that if only he had been there, he could have helped her. Albeit young, Izuku was anything but stupid. He was aware, or at least his rational part was, that even if he had been there, he wouldn't have been able to do anything but die at his mother's side. However, then again, knowing and believing are two vastly different things. Right now, he could only watch as his house was being burned to crisp. He could do absolutely nothing to help. He was utterly useless, powerless. He could feel his vision becoming blurry, and even with the crowd, he could only hear his own choked-out sobs as he watched on his knees how his home as well as his mother disappeared. He couldn't see, he couldn't hear, he couldn't breathe, and he couldn't feel anything but despair. Chapter 2. Summary. Making Izuku's life even more horrible than it already is. Notes. I'm back with a brand new chapter. TW child abuse. That should be it, probably. Yes, I like emojis. Don't ask me why, I don't know. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Today was just another horrible day of Izuku's horrible life. Since his mother's death, everything seemed to have started going wrong, seemed to have started getting worse. Well, that being said, Izuku was aware that the life he had led before was far from being a really bad one. He had a loving mother, a roof to stay under, a steady supply of food, friends to play with, and enough money to never have had to worry about anything on that side. Granted, that man was barely at home, and when he was, Izuku's mother would have to suffer, but he, himself, was never hurt before that incident. Even at the young age of 3, he could have named an endless amount of situations worse than his, or at least that was until actually nearly all of the good things in his life disappeared. Everything started going wrong when the monster came home a week after Inko's death. You might want to ask about where this home was since their house was burned to crisp, with nothing remaining of it, not even a corpse to mourn over. Well, apparently he had bought another house where he spent the night when he didn't really want to see or let his anger out on his family. Needless to say, he wasn't exactly pleased when had to bring Izuku with him, instead of just letting him starve to death on the streets. Speaking of, this had brought up another question in Izuku's mind. Why hadn't he? He made it more than obvious that he didn't want to keep him. Why did he still decide to do so? Izuku didn't know. However, at the moment he was already content with not having to starve to death, which was apparently really painful. It seemed that he should have been worried since Hisashi had found another place to stay, and he hadn't, even though it was a good idea to come check on his son during the entire week after her death. Luckily, the shelves held enough food for him to survive on for a few weeks. The food, however, didn't protect him from his father's wrath when he came back. Izuku didn't understand, really. He hadn't done anything wrong, so why was that monster angry at him? Why did he have to apologize to calm him down? Izuku didn't understand. That being said, just because he didn't understand didn't mean he wouldn't do it. Oh, on the contrary, if it was enough to appease him, Izuku was more than happy to do so. It was the second beating he received. However, the little boy had heard enough of his mother's begging to know how to do it. The problem was that monster seemed unable to calm down even with Izuku's begging. He started screaming, flames mixing with his yells. It's all your fault. I knew I should have just left you on the streets to starve and die like the rat you are. Then why didn't you? I shouldn't have let her give birth to you. All you do is bring misery to people. I didn't ask you to do so. You were the one who made that decision. How is it my fault? I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for that damned money. I would have already thrown you away long ago if it weren't for that damned deal. You were the one who agreed, so why is it my fault? Wait, money? Deal? Whatever, he didn't have enough energy to think about that kind of thing at the moment. He whole body aced and nothing was left untouched. Now that he though about it, that was unusual. Even with his mother, he never hit her face. Whatever, he just wanted to go to sleep. Later the next day, Izuku discovered that his father actually came home drunk because his business had started to plummet. Although he didn't quite get the details, he did understand that he lost an enormous amount of money, and if he snickered after hearing the news, no one needed to know. It was the day of his 4th birthday, and obviously Izuku wasn't that excited about it. He knew plenty well that nothing special would happen at best, and at worst, that man would be even more angry since he absolutely wouldn't want to celebrate his birth. Izuku, however, wasn't really the luck type, and for some reason he had a really bad feeling about that day. TJ's voice inside of him screamed and yelled, telling him to get away and never come back. He had never been wrong about that kind things, but it wasn't as if he could just live on the streets and die of starvation. Granted, he didn't really get a lot to eat in the house either, but it was enough to keep him alive, not to mention that it was nearly winter and that he wouldn't be able to survive the cold. All in all, as much as he wanted to listen to what this voice had to say, he couldn't. Soon after, he could hear that man's footsteps as he crossed the house to stop at the door to Izuku's room. The young boy was already in a defensive stance, however he was surprised when he heard him actually knocking before coming in. Well, the surprise didn't really last long as that guy entered without even waiting for his answer. What awaited him wasn't really what he was expecting though. Instead of his usual look of disgust and disdain, he seemed rather excited. Izuku should have been happy. No, actually, he probably would have been happy if it weren't for the voice in his that was screaming and telling him to get away. Okay, this was strange, way too strange to be real. Was he perhaps dreaming? Well, that probably made more sense than what was happening right now, way more sense. Izuku was prepared for the worst when Hisashi opened his mouth. What he didn't expect was what he was about to say. Izu, I have a birthday gift for you. Come to the kitchen when you're ready. He sounded sweeter than ever, as if his voice had been dipped in honey. That alone was enough to send a chill down Izuku's spine. There were only 4 options that actually made a little sense. 1. There was a stranger in the house, and that man had to behave well in front of them. 2. Izuku was dreaming, granted, a strange dream, but a dream nonetheless. 3. Someone had taken over his father's body. 4. Hisashi had genuinely gone crazy. The first option was dismissed since he surely would have heard the other person's footsteps. The second one had the same fate after Izuku pinched himself to verify that theory. Between the third and fourth one, the fourth honestly seemed more probable to him as Izuku was already half convinced that that man was crazy even before this more than strange display. Izuku was now sure that even if that old fart were to start running around the house, butt naked and with boxers on his head, he wouldn't be surprised anymore. Well, it didn't really matter since, whether he was crazy or not, Izuku still had to follow his orders, and it was clear that although he used a soft tone, this wasn't a request. He already felt as though his head was going to implode, so this really wasn't welcome, but it's not like Hisashi would care, right? He hurriedly exited his room and ran towards the kitchen as he had told him to. In front of him sat Hisashi Midoriya, whose face was adorned with a sickly sweet smile, though it resembled more of a grin in Izuku's opinion. He held a box in his hand, and although Izuku was curious as to what was inside of it, he didn't really look forward to the moment it was opened. Well, it wasn't as though he had a say in the matter when that man asked him to open the box and try on what was inside. Izuku did as ordered, however, when he was about to put the bracelet, which was actually really pretty, he had found in said box on, he couldn't bring himself to do it. The screech in his head had become uncontrollably loud, and he couldn't help but hesitate and look his father in the eyes. Hisashi may have been smiling, but the eyes that looked down at him showed a weird mix of anger, indifference, happiness, excitement, and other emotions he couldn't quite put a name on, not that it really mattered. However, when he saw the boy hesitating, a familiar kind of anger showed on Hisashi's face. Tesk, can't do anything right, huh? Shouldn't have expected anything else from you. Before Izuku even had the time to react, his wrist was yanked upward, so much so that his feet couldn't reach the ground. Well, not that this really mattered either, he was already fully expecting it to happen after all. Don't get him wrong, it hurt a lot. He felt as if his arm was being ripped off, but it was the kind of pain he was all too familiar with. So much so that it didn't really have an effect on him, except for the wince that crossed his face. Izuku knew all too well what was about to happen. It always began like this. After being lifted, he would be punched in the gut or thrown to the other end of the room. The boy braced himself for what was to come, but nothing happened. While something did happen, he put the bracelet on Izuku's wrist before releasing him, of course not bothering to set him down gently. The boy couldn't quite concentrate on anything at the moment. His brain was kind of fuzzy, and he couldn't think clearly. However, what Izuku did notice was that the voice in his head was gone. Nothing at all, totally silent. It was strange. It had been an integral part of him for so long that he felt kind of empty, as if something was missing. It was an odd feeling, a really odd one. He was so dazzled that he didn't even notice the way Hisashi walked away, a smirk plastered on his face. Chapter 3. Summary. Izuku meets someone new after suffering. Notes. It's been a long time since I last posted, right? I have no excuses, so sorry. TW, child abuse, Hisashi honestly speaking. The two come hand in hand, but I still wanted to give him a trigger warning. You never know, right? Enjoy. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Quirkless. Izuku knew this word, he understood its meanings and what awaited quirkless people. He had a lot of free time since he was constantly cooped up at home. He certainly had enough time to use Hisashi's computer without him noticing, of course, and research a ton of things, use it to analyze heroes and villains, or simply study to satisfy his thirst for knowledge. So, when he heard about quirkless people, of course Izuku was curious about them. How did they survive in a quirk-based society? Izuku wanted to know. He was surprised, and not at the same time, when he discovered that they simply didn't. That most of them just ended up dying young, and if they didn't, they would just become homeless. So, yes, Izuku knew about them, probably more than most people did, but he never imagined himself as being one of them. He never thought his life could get just that much worse, but hell was he astounded when it did. He couldn't seem to process the words he had just heard. 80% of the population had quirks. Most of the ones who didn't were old people from a generation where quirks were rare. Young quirkless people were already considered really rare all around the world, not to mention in Japan, which was a country known for producing the most quirked people and where people like him were considered almost non-existent. It was such a rare occurrence that Izuku could be considered as part of an endangered species. If only that were true, at least he could be protected by the law. A law that most surely didn't apply to him. Now that they this rare, what were the chances of someone with an already shitty life being diagnosed as such, and the worst part has yet to come. Quirkless people didn't even have soulmates, as if to prove the people who thought of them as lesser right. It was funny though, truly to Izuku, it seemed pretty obvious that soulmates existed, because of the same reason quirks did, so of course, if one didn't have a quirk, one wouldn't have a soulmate. Most people, though, seemed to think that it was because some gods that came out of nowhere also deemed quirkless people as worthless and undeserving of a partner who would love them unconditionally. Endeavor. What Izuku found even more funny, though, was that people with soulmates thought they were better than those without ones, when most people never even get to meet their significant other. Like, come on, seriously? They think of themselves as better thanks to a person they most likely will end up never meeting. It was pretty hilarious for the little boy. That of course didn't mean he wasn't excited at the idea of there being someone who will love him unconditionally, unlike that man. Apparently, soulmates could even feel it when their fated other dies, which, in Izuku's opinion, seemed pretty romantic, albeit being a little twisted. Imagine having to see your partner feel the loss of his fated one. Twisted, right? So him? Quirkless? What a joke! Hisashi already thought of him as a liability, a deadweight, an utterly useless existence. What would he do after hearing that? After knowing that no matter what he did, no one would help Izuku since he would be nothing but a nuisance in their eyes as well. He couldn't help but fear for the worst, fear for the future, fear for his life. Now, no one would be there to help him get through everything. No one would be there to support him. Hell, even if he showed up half dead at a hospital, they might refuse to treat him, let alone worry about his home life. Not to mention that no one would even know or care about his death. Put in simpler words, he was done for. Izuku already had a bad feeling when he was told to get out of his room and prepare to go out in the morning. He hadn't been allowed to get out of the house since that incident, so you can imagine how excited and fearful he was about going out for the first time in months. And when he was told that they would go consult about his quirk, it seemed even more unbelievable to Izuku. Adding to it that it was one of the most renowned doctors in all of Musatafu, it was the cherry on top. Although he was curious to know how and why that man got this appointment for, his excitement overshadowed all of it. Oh, he should have known something was off. Oh, he should have known. However, as mature and intelligent as Izuku was, he was still a child, and as rational as he was for his age, he was still immature. So, when he heard the doctor practically handing him a death sentence, something in Izuku broke. It was as if the little bit of hope he had held while admiring this building was crushed right in front of him, as if all of his dreams were. He thought that now his situation couldn't possibly get any worse. Oh, how wrong he was, and one look at that man told him so. Hisashi didn't look angry, furious even, on the contrary, he was happy, delighted even. For most people, it would have been a good sign to see their parents wearing a happy expression when exiting the building. For Izuku, however, it meant his downfall. It meant that he wasn't sure if he would come out this alive. The car ride home was filled with silence, utter silence, no yelling, shouting, or even hitting. Not even a single word came out of Hisashi's mouth. It was odd. Something should have already happened, even if it was just him being insulted. He didn't get it. What was wrong with him? Was Izuku right with guessing that he had gone crazy? Was that why he was smiling happily at the results he heard? Izuku didn't understand. The silence made Izuku dread their return home even more. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Izuku sat in his room, absolutely dazed. Nothing happened, absolutely nothing. He couldn't believe it. Had Hisashi truly been happy? Was that why he was left alone? No, that couldn't have been it. Everyone, even dogs on the street, hated quirkless people. There was absolutely no chance that he would be happy for him, none. After Izuku had that revelation, he decided to just wait and enjoy what he is certain was the calm before the storm. It hurts. Everything hurts. Izuku's entire body feels as though it's on fire. To be fair, he actually has quite a few new burns on his body. He feels as though his throat is ripping on the inside. Honestly, even if it really were, he wouldn't know since the taste of copper in his mouth could come from various other injuries. Still, he has to speak, he has to beg. He knows. He knows that if he doesn't, he might really end up dying today. It's nothing new though. The feeling of blood in his mouth, the burns on his body, the cuts of glass piercing his skin, the bruises from Hisashi's punches and kicks, his throat screaming at him to stop speaking albeit him being unable to do so, the feeling of his stomach grumbling due to him not having eaten in days. Izuku was familiar enough with this pain. It had already been half a year since he was diagnosed as quirkless. The first day, Hisashi subtly left him alone. He wouldn't even get yelled at for going out of his room. It was the same for the second and third day. On the fourth day, he seemed to be getting impatient, as though he was waiting for something to happen. He couldn't have been waiting for Izuku's quirk to manifest since he knew it wouldn't. What was going on with him? TJ curly-haired boy didn't know. On the fifth day, Hisashi started yelling at him for going out of his room again. On the sixth, he slapped the boy multiple times. On the seventh, he started kicking him and yelling things Izuku couldn't understand, be it because his mind was blurry as he was being beaten, or because the words just didn't make sense. Izuku didn't know or care, really. As if on cue, he felt a powerful kick draining the air out of his lungs. "You're just a useless, disgusting bastard. It's all because of you. If you weren't so useless, he would have already come to pick you. If you weren't so useless, I would have already be living in a new house, and I wouldn't be stuck here taking care of you. It's all your fault." "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. Please stop. Please. I'm begging you. Please stop. It hurts. Dad, it hurts." His plight couldn't have been above a whisper with the state his throat was in, but Izuku still tried for all it was worth. He still couldn't help but let out weak whimpers and choked sobs as the monster continued his relentless assault. He was truly desperate. Izuku couldn't see any way to escape, and if this continued, he wasn't sure if he could make it out of there alive. Still, Izuku couldn't do anything but hope and pray for it to be over soon. He could only endure and hope to see another day. After going on for one more minute, Hisashi seemed to have gotten enough of him since he turned around to leave. The little boy was just about to get up and go to his room when he turned around to look at his son, eyes filled with nothing but disgust. "Get out of the house and don't come back till evening. If I see you lurking around here, you'll regret it." After he was done, Hisashi walked towards the living room to watch TV. Izuku was in a mess, an utter mess. He didn't know what to do or where to go. Hell, now that he thought about it, he didn't even know where he was. After being told to get out of the house, he did. That, however, wasn't really the smartest choice, as it was only the second time he had gotten out since they moved in. The first time, having been in a car, he didn't really get to see much of his surroundings. A 5-year-old boy walking alone around a shady street. It was really his lucky day, right? Not to mention that he was in as much of mess, appearance-wise than situation-wise. It was clear that he had been crying by the strains on his face. His unruly curly green hair hadn't been cut in a year and a half. It was the kind to grow fast as well. He was covered in bruises and cuts leaking from multiple wounds. Hisashi had thrown a vase in his fit of anger, and Izuku had to feel the consequences. He was pretty sure one of his ribs and his upper arm were fractured as well. Couldn't have been better, right? Well, nothing he could about it. It was about noon, meaning he needed to spend around 10 hours outside before coming back if he wanted to avoid being beaten again, according to Hisashi's surprisingly regular sleep schedule. Izuku didn't really know what to do. He doubted there would be a park in this kind of place, but he couldn't really continue lingering on the streets until he could get home either, except if he wanted to get kidnapped. Izuku wasn't that naive, okay? Still, he didn't really have any other option available. Well, technically speaking, he could just hide in corner and hope to not be found. Well, now that he thought about it, it wasn't actually a bad idea. It wasn't a bad idea at all. Having decided on what to do, Izuku started searching the streets for somewhere to stay for the next hours, hoping that he would still find his way back home before the next day. It was surprisingly easy for him to find somewhere relatively safe and clean-looking, as safe and clean as it could get in dirty alleys that were in the unsafest part of Musatafu. After sitting there for a while, Izuku couldn't help but start thinking about everything that was happening to him. He was hurt everywhere, be it physically or mentally. He couldn't help it. He just wanted his mom back. He wanted Kekken back. He wanted Aunt Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru back. Izuku simply wanted his old life back. He wanted to feel his mother's warm and comforting embrace back. He wanted her to tell that everything would be okay, that he would make it out safely, that he would survive, that he was safe. He just wanted to get everything he had lost back. He wanted to lie down on a comfortable and soft bed. He wanted to play heroes with his best friend. He wanted to eat homemade katsudon. He wanted to be anywhere but here. It was summer, but the watch was anything but comforting. He hadn't drunk anything for the entire day, nor had he eaten. He aced everywhere from the beating earlier, and having nothing else to do but losing himself in those fond memories, he started crying. Crying for everything he missed. Crying for everything he wanted back. Crying for everything he had to go through. Crying for all the pain he had to endure. As much as he tried to hold back, he couldn't. It was as if whatever had been holding his breakdown back had finally broken. He couldn't think straight anymore. It felt as if the entire world had just come crashing down on him. As he lost himself in his tears, he lost the count of time, and before he knew, at least a few hours had passed. He was exhausted, slouched so that even the tears had stopped flowing. He was just left there empty, as if he were nothing more than a shell of a human body. It was strange. His mom always told him that crying would make him feel better. Izuku didn't feel better at all though. It was as if someone had taken away all his emotions. He couldn't bring himself to feel sad at the memories of his dead mother. He couldn't bring himself to be angry at his father. He couldn't bring himself to be happy at being able to go out of the house. He just felt empty of everything. He was cut out of his thoughts by a chipper and happy voice coming from in front of him. How had he not noticed her? "Hi, I've never seen you around here before. What's your name?" Chapter 4. Summary. Some nice fluff and tears. Notes. Hello, I'm back with a brand new chapter, right out of the oven. Are you excited? I hope you are, because guess what? There will be a little fluff. Yay! TW mentions child neglect. I know the trigger warning isn't really associated with fluff, but I'm gonna create a chapter with both. I hope it turns out good and fluffy, just like the pizza bread I made recently. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Did someone just talk to him? Yes, someone did. Was Izuku frightened by the idea of having been found? Yes, he was. Was he slightly reassured by the fact that it sounded like that person was his age? Of course. Did that mean he would just let his guard down? Of course not. Izuku wasn't dumb enough to think of the person in front of him as harmless just because they appeared to be. He certainly wasn't that stupid. And yet, why did he feel good and relaxed when the girl that was in front of him hugged him? Well, the world was still full of mysteries after all. Just like that, another waterfall started flowing out of his eyes. How long had it been since the last time he was hugged properly? How long had it been since he last had a shoulder to cry on? How long had it been since the last time he had felt this safe, this warm, this relieved? As much as Izuku wanted to keep his guard up, he couldn't. He really was touch-starved, wasn't he? Well, who could blame him? His life had been miserable for the last year and a half. He didn't even have proper time to mourn his mother, as he had to worry about his survival, something no 3-year-old should have had to. It felt good to feel the warmth of another person in a way. It reminded him of the times when his mother and he would cuddle to sleep together in their bed. It reminded him of the warmth he used to be filled with. Suddenly, he didn't feel as empty anymore. It was strange how a complete stranger could make him feel that way when his very own father couldn't. It was strange, but it did feel good. It felt good enough for him to momentarily just forget about all of his problems, about all of his pain. He felt like he could be like any other child, like he could be normal, and although he knew all too well that it was nothing but an illusion, he couldn't bring himself to let go of this newfound warmth. He couldn't help but to cling to it with all his might. He had no idea how long he spent crying, muffled in her shoulder, sobbing like a child. Well, he was a child in the end, wasn't he? Not that it really mattered, since his age wouldn't change his life. Now that he knew about it, that man might just start beating him more as he grew, without having to worry about him dying. Now he wanted to cry again. Whether it should be considered fortunate or not, Izuku didn't know. But now, he literally had no tears left to spill. Okay, now, how should he deal with the mess he was in? How would he face the girl who was hugging him? Oh God, what was he supposed to do now? It had literally been a year and a half since he last interacted with someone his age. What was he supposed to do? Should he introduce himself first? But it wouldn't be a good idea to give his name to a stranger, right? Then again, she did comfort him when he was crying, so she should be a good person, right? What if she was just pretending to be one to kidnap him later? Hey? Are you back with us? Was he mumbling? Oh God, please tell him he was. Yes, you were. The little girl answered him while smiling happily. Oh God, he was in trouble. Wait, how many times did he think of God today? Probably more than in his entire lifetime. Wait, now that he looked at her properly, she had fangs? Are those the result of her quirk? Was it a mutation? It probably was. It's like a vampire or a bat. Does that mean her quirk is blood-related? Most likely. She probably needs blood to activate it, somewhat like Vlad King. What could her quirk be? Izuku was so curious. Should he ask her? She might answer him. After all, she looks really nice. But she might be creeped out if he were to do that. How frustrating. What was he supposed to? You're curious about my quirk? Wait, how did you guess all that? You must be super smart. Oh no, he was mumbling again. She didn't look like it was bothering her, so he could still try to ask, right? He just hopes it won't end badly, but he was simply way too curious. Her quirk looked so interesting. Wait, snap out of it. You need to answer her, Izuku. So your name is Izuku. My name is Himiko. Nice to meet you. She somehow looked even happier than before. Izuku wondered why she was out there when it was so late. It was too dangerous for a kid to be outside alone at night. Well, who was he kidding? He was doing the exact same thing. And nice to meet you, Himiko-chan. Wait, was that too familiar? Should he have asked for her last name? But if she gave him her first name, it meant she wanted him to use that, right? But wasn't that too close? They just met, what? An hour or so ago. He didn't have long to think about it because he was snapped out of it by a loud squeal coming from right in front of him. "You're so cute, Izu-chan. I could eat you right up." CC cute? Just in what world did she live in to think of him as cute? Wait, Izu-chan? Well, he probably shouldn't have worried about being too familiar on their first meeting after all. Since she was so friendly, she might be willing to answer some of my questions about her quirk, right? What should he ask first? What it was exactly? Was he right to think it was blood-related? Was it something that was constantly on, or did she need to activate it? Ah, so many questions. Where should he begin? Prob. Well, I don't mind answering your questions. She giggled. Yes, my quirk is blood-related. I can drink blood with my fangs, and then I can transform into whoever's blood I drank. I really like blood, it's the prettiest thing there is, but I can't really drink it since Mama and Papa said it was bad. It's okay though, I can also drink animal blood, so I sometimes catch squirrels or rats. They're not really my favorite, but it still tastes good. Oh, and when I lick wounds, the bleeding stops faster. I don't really get to do it a lot since Mama and Papa said that it was unhygienic though. Really? Oh my god, that's so cool. It would be so useful if you wanted to be a spy. Do you also take some character traits from the people you transform into? So your saliva is kind of like a bat's, right? Could you show me how you do it? Does the time you can transform for depend on the quantity? Or the blood type? Can you transform into animals as well? Does your entire mass change? If so, how does it happen? Izuku's rant was quickly interrupted when he saw tears welling up in her eyes. Oh no, did he overwhelm her? Was she crying because of him? Izuku didn't mean to make his first friend since Kaken cry. Oh no, how was he supposed to comfort her? What if she started to hate him? No, that can wait for later. Right now, he needed to find a way to get her to calm down. Ah, right, he felt better after she hugged him, so wouldn't she as well? With that being said or thought, he quickly started hugging her and doing his best to calm her down. I'm sorry, I won't do it again, so please don't cry anymore, okay? I don't want you to be sad. What he heard in those sobs was definitely sadness, but it didn't take the young boy long to figure out that he wasn't the cause of it. She curled in the same way he did, tears of sadness, yes, but also tears of relief at the warmth they were given. Izuku still wondered why he got attached to her so quickly. They had barely talked at all, and met not even a few hours ago. It might have been because no one had been this kind to him in nearly 2 years. Honestly, it didn't matter to Izuku anymore, he just wanted her to feel loved and cared for, just like he did in her embrace. He wanted her to be happy. He would do whatever it takes to make it so because she deserved it. She deserved it just as much as any other person did, and Izuku decided that if no one else would be willing to make her happy, he would. You may think he just wanted to use her as a pillar so that he wouldn't collapse, but just as much as he wanted a pillar, he intended to be one for her as well. It was funny and strange, she didn't even need to tell him anything, he just knew. He knew that she needed one just as much as he did. As she continued crying, Izuku just continued holding her tight, telling her that he was there, and that she wouldn't need to be alone anymore, that he would make sure to stay by her side and help her through. It may have not seemed that way, but Izuku was reassuring himself just as much as he was her. He needed her just as much as she needed him. How long they were together? Neither knew, but they were both sure they had found someone to rely on, here in these empty streets, and they would make sure to protect each other, no matter what. Although they fell asleep in a dirty, shady alley, they felt safer and warmer than they ever had. Chapter 5. Summary. Sorry, but the fluff is over for now. Notes. 2 chapters in a day? Not really, but let's gloss over it. Wow, amazing, I'm proud of myself. The only problem is that I'm not really in the mood for fluff, so sorry but not so sorry. TW Child Abuse Hisashi. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Stupid. That was the only way to describe how Izuku felt right now. He was stupid to have given in to the sweet, sweet call of sleep in an environment where he felt safe. Stupid. Stupid for not thinking of the consequences. Stupid for letting himself drown in the comfort of the other's presence besides him. Stupid for forgetting. For forgetting about the dangers in his life. He felt utterly stupid. Now that he was back to reality, he needed to face the consequences. Now that he was ripped out of his illusion of happiness, he understood the consequences. Actually, he could feel the consequences, and it hurt a lot, more than it ever had. Guess what? when Hisashi realized that Izuku still wasn't back when it was really late. He waited, and while waiting, he couldn't help becoming more and more angry at the thought of that useless thing disobeying him. He thought and thought and thought, what would be the best way to make that bastard remember his place without necessarily putting him at death's door? He couldn't be bothered to spend his precious money on its hospital bills, and he couldn't just let it die either. It was still supposed to be picked up, and he couldn't give it to them half dead, or they might decide that it was worth less now. And while thinking, he realized he had the perfect quirk for that kind of scenarios, didn't he? That's why Izuku was suffering as much as he was right now. Izuku felt so truly stupid for forgetting about the order that man had given him to be home in the evening. It hurt so much, and it felt so much worse now that he knew. Now that had felt this warmth of an embrace again, now that he felt the sweetness of love again. Meeting that man's cold, borderline insane star, it hurt way too much. Oh, how he despised that feeling, how he hated the way it hurt, the way knowing his own father hated him so much hurt. Izuku knows that logically speaking it really shouldn't. That man was a monster and Izuku knew it, but the way he looked at him, with such glee in his eyes at the idea of hurting him, of Izuku suffering at his hands, it hurt way more than his physical wounds did at the moment. Although he already knew how much his father hated him from the year and a half full of abuse he spent with him, Izuku still held hope. Hope that one day he would get himself together and they could be a happy, normal family. Izuku knew it was stupid. He knew it was bad. He truly did know, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't help wanting the only family he had to love him. He knew he was stupid for hoping things would get better. Although his logical side had been aware of it for a long time, his childish side couldn't help but hold hope that he would one day be loved. The burns hurt, they did. His broken arm hurt, it really did. His entire body, and no one could say otherwise. But the look in Hisashi's eyes hurt him way more than any physical wound ever could. Izuku felt something in him break. He didn't know what it was, but it definitely broke. Was it the last bit of feelings he held for the man in front of him? Was it his mind? Was he going crazy? Was it his emotions? Was it perhaps another bone? Izuku didn't know. He didn't want to know. He just wanted to be at peace, to forget. And so he did. Everything that happened afterwards was a blur. He could only remember things vaguely, without much detail. That monster yelling something he couldn't quite remember. Him getting out of the house again. That was it. Probably? Izuku wasn't sure. Not that he held any peculiar interest in knowing anyways. The only thing he remembers is that he's supposed to only come back the next morning. Izuku wasn't quite sure how to do it, but he would probably figure it out. Key word. Probably he might even be able to meet with Himi-chan today. If she was even out. He really hoped she was going to be, because Izuku really didn't want to be alone at the moment. He really didn't. He didn't know how he would take care of these injuries either. His arm was most definitely broken, and he didn't know how to treat burns. He considered it a miracle that his fractured rib didn't break, because it might have punctured his lungs if it did, and Izuku wasn't too keen at the idea of dying. If he really had to die, he at least wanted it to be as painless as possible, and drowning in his own blood didn't really sound appealing to the young boy. He was in too much of a rush to properly say goodbye to Himi-chan. She requested to be called that before they fell asleep, before running home. He felt really bad about it. It was honestly a miracle that it had only taken Izuku 2 hours to find his way back home, and it was an even bigger miracle that he found their spot again while he was in a daze. As Izuku had expected, she was gone. He still decided to wait there to see if she would come back, as this was the only place they both knew about. He waited and waited and waited for what seemed to be hours. Just as he was staring to lose hope, he heard her voice. Izu-chan, I didn't think you'd be back so soon. If I had known, I would have come earlier. She sounded really happy, approaching with a pretty big bag, which seemed to be filled to the brim. He wondered what was inside. He was quickly ripped out of his thoughts when he saw her expression gradually darken as she approached him. Izuku wondered, was she angry at him? It didn't seem that way though, judging by her reaction from before. It hit Izuku like lightning. She was worried about him. Izuku really was lucky to have met someone as kind as Himi-chan. Was truly a blessing. She even told him that she didn't care whether he had a quirk or not. How truly lucky he was. Are you okay? Izu-chan, you look horrible. she whimpered as she gradually looked over his wounds, her chipper tone having completely disappeared. How did you get so injured when it has only been 8 since the last time I saw you? She was about to start crying and Izuku, not knowing what to do, only answered, I'm really alright Himi-chan, it's just a broken bone and a few burns, nothing too bad. It looks worse than is. Really? With a wobbly smile drawing on his lips. Just as he was about to start freaking out because that had done anything but calm her down, he really meant it. His stomach let out a loud grumble. Izuku couldn't help but shrink in on himself, completely red from embarrassment. He hadn't eaten anything in days and was starting to get really hungry. He couldn't say he was new to this though, as this was pretty normal for him. Himi-chan didn't seem to take it the same way though. Before Izuku could even think of apologizing, she took a giant water bottle and bento out her bag and handed it to him. If it had been any other day, he might have refused, but Izuku was way too hungry and thirsty to give any other kind of reaction but to take it. She looked at him with a proud smile on her face. Eat slowly, Izuku, no one is going to take it away from you. If you eat too quickly, you might get a stomachache. Izuku did as he was told, not really being up for hurting more than necessary. After Izuku was done eating, Himi-chan slowly looked over his injuries and patched him up. He was really curious as to how she knew that she needed to bring burnt cream with her, but eventually decided that he didn't really need to know. Her touch was so gentle, as if she were handling glass, so careful not to break it, so careful not to hurt him. If Izuku were being honest, he was happy that she deemed him worthy of being dealt with gently, carefully. She was so very nice. Izuku wondered why her parents would be so negligent as to allow her to stroll out at night. He wondered why they had to suffer when they did nothing wrong, when they did nothing to deserve this treatment. He knew all too well that they didn't do anything, that some people were just that way, cruel, cold, and disgusting. He still thinks that if he really did something to deserve this, it would be easier to cope with everything that was happening because he would deserve it. He wouldn't be suffering for no reason. Izuku knew that that kind of thoughts would bring him nowhere and that it was a better idea to just talk with Himi-chan and forget about everything else. Later that evening, Himi-chan just gave him a blanket she had brought for fear of him needing to sleep outside again. She gave him the idea of sleeping on a rooftop instead of on the ground, and Izuku had to admit that it was a really good idea. If someone were to steal his quilt while he was sleeping, it would get problematic for him. She even told him about her secret hiding spot. She would spend the night there when she got thrown out of the house. Although it couldn't be called clean, it was still better than the streets. The area is covered as well, so the rain won't get in either. That's a big plus. Since it was in a corner, no one could sneak up on you from behind either. All in all, it was truly perfect. Izuku couldn't have been more grateful to Himi-chan, even if he had wanted to, and although he had only known her for a day, she was already the most important person in his life to him. He really didn't want her to leave, but he refused to ask her to stay with him either. He couldn't be so selfish as to ask her to sleep outside just to satisfy his greed. He couldn't do that to her when she had already given him so much. He couldn't. As if sensing his distress, she tugged his sleeve and walked towards the corner, blanket in hand. The young girl sat down and patted the ground next to her. What are you doing? Come lie down next to me. She sounded cheerful and more than happy to spend the night with him. Izuku felt his chest warm up and couldn't help a little smile tugging at his lips as he made his way towards her. They snuggled up next to each other, sharing their warmth. Even with everything that happened that day, Izuku was still happy. He had finally found someone he could proudly proclaim his family, without a hint of shame. He was sure his mother would be proud of him if she saw him right now. Good night, Himi-ni, he whispered softly while drifting to sleep. And if she was taken aback by the way he called her, she didn't let it show. Good night, Izu. They both fell asleep, a small smile on their faces. Todoroki residence. Shadow, if you want to surpass All Might one day, you need to work harder than that. Stand up, right now. The only noises that were escaping Shadow's mouth were small pained whimpers. He really wanted to stand up, he really did. He couldn't. Everything hurt, no matter what he tried, his body wouldn't bulge. This was only making father more angry. He needed to get up and quickly, or he would end up hurting even more. As his consciousness slowly started to drift away, he could vaguely hear his brother shouting, "Stop! You're gonna kill him if you continue like this." The last thing Shadow heard before being unable to keep going anymore was a loud crash. Ah, his brother was injured. He needed to get up. Everything turned black, and in a last effort, he barely managed to whisper, "No." Chapter 6. Summary. No fluff, but it's pretty neutral for a chapter, meaning that there's no super big violent scene. Notes. Hello, I hope y'all will have a good new year and that you'll all be healthy and happy. With that being said, I am here to give you a new chapter. Some cheers, please. Please? TW Child Neglect. Enjoy. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Izu, please take care of yourself better. If you're injured, you should tell me. But Himi ni, if I told you, you would have refused to take my blood. Taking care of your injuries is much more important. I can survive even if I don't drink blood, but your injuries could become so much worse by just letting them be. You know very well that even if they got infected, he would never take you to the hospital to get your injuries treated. Please Izuku, I'm begging you, please tell me when you're injured. Your well-being is so much more important to me than some measly blood. I can't just lose you. As she went on, her voice gradually grew quieter until it could barely be considered a whisper. The care, anxiousness, and fear in her eyes made Izuku unable to hold back his tears. He couldn't not comply, knowing how much she cared for him. I'm sorry, Himi ni, I won't ever do it again. He whispered in her ear after they had sobbed together for at least 10 minutes. Most people would think that when one only knew each other for half a year, they wouldn't be able to consider the other party as family. It was different for them. Even when they barely knew each other, they couldn't not be seen as family. As the months went by, they only grew closer, close enough to share their deepest secrets with each other. That's how Izuku discovered that his Ni-chan was starved by her own parents. Sure, they gave her food, and although she did need it as well, what she truly needed was blood. They deprived her of it, forbade her to drink it if she still wanted a roof over her head. Izuku was aware that that kind of deprivation would only cause a lot of problems for her later on. When one is starved for too long, they are more likely to lose control of their quirk, and it couldn't be described as good for their mental health either. All in all, starving someone will backfire monumentally. Right after hearing about what her parents did to her, Izuku told her that she could drink his, since they would have no way of knowing if he didn't tell on her. It was also the easiest way of providing her blood. Everything was going well until she started refusing to drink his blood when he was injured. He found it strange, but didn't pry. He didn't want to make uncomfortable, and he was pretty sure she read somewhere on the internet that it could worsen his state. Well, if she were to nearly empty him to death, then it would backfire. But Izuku was sure that only taking a little blood every so often wouldn't harm him at all. She didn't seem to be of the same opinion though, since she started refusing to drink his blood when he had anything but minor injuries, which only happened when Hisashi stayed out for a week. It was quite rare for him to stay out for more than a week, although it did happen. That day, Izuku was told to stay out of the house once more. Since Hisashi realized that it was a possibility, he would be out more than not while the man stayed in there. Izuku was actually quite happy with this arrangement. At least he could spend quite a lot of nights with Himi ni. The true problem arose when winter started. It became really cold every night. Himi ni would stay with him every time he had to sleep outside since the warmth of two people was better than that of one. Although Izuku felt bad about it, he didn't refuse since it was true that he might freeze to death if he were to sleep alone, or he at least felt that way. It was the night before his birthday and Izuku wanted to stay awake until midnight to celebrate it with her. Unfortunately, she needed to stay at home tonight. They didn't know why. Her parents told her to come back and Izuku was stuck, celebrating alone, on a rooftop in the middle of winter, with nothing to keep himself warm. Truly perfect. At least that's what he thought until he heard voice next to him, which should have been literally impossible. Hey, what's a kid like you doing alone on a rooftop in the middle of winter, at night to boot? When Izuku turned around, he saw a disheveled man with long wavy black hair. He wore completely black clothes with a long gray scarf wrapped around his neck. He kind of looked like a hobo. Oh, he said that out loud, didn't he? You're one to talk, kid. I'm not the homeless one here, neither am I sleeping outside as you are. Yep, he definitely said that out loud. Oh well, if he already started a conversation, might as well continue. If you're not homeless and sleeping outside, then why are you on this roof with me? Besides, I'm not homeless. Izuku was quite proud that he didn't even stutter once when answering the man. If there was one thing he learned, it was that showing weakness would only mark him as easy prey. If it worked with other kids, surely it would work with adults as well, right? He really couldn't afford for this spot to be stolen. He would be in deep trouble if it were. He knew pertinently well that using this method on kids who wanted to bully him for his quirklessness and using it on adults were two entirely different matters. The problem was that this was the only method he could think of at the moment. He was grasping at straws. Relax, kid, I'm neither after your spot nor am I homeless. I just wanted to make sure you were all right since it's not every day you see someone as young as you camping outside, even less so in the middle of winter. Although his voice was gruff, Izuku though he sounded honest while speaking, not that this would be enough to make him relax. I mean, come on, Izuku would have already been kidnapped or killed long ago. If he were that easy to reassure, he wasn't that careless. Himini was the only exception to this rule. Well, now that you know I'm alright, I think you should leave me alone, except if you're really just a homeless guy looking for somewhere to stay. I doubt that's the case though. If you were, you wouldn't have been able to sneak up on me. Okay, that's not what he had meant to say, but hey, at least he didn't stutter. It is a valid theory though. He wouldn't have been able to sneak up on Izuku if he were a normal hobo, meaning that he at least has some training. Now he's either a hero or someone trying to kidnap him. The boy obviously preferred option 1, but unfortunately, option 2 seemed more realistic to him. Seriously, what would a hero even be doing here? Izuku slowly tried to sneak out the knife he had been given by Himini for self-defense. He knew he stood no chance against the adult, but he surely wouldn't go down without a fight. 5 years old was too young to die. He would do everything in his might to survive. He needed to survive for Himini. She was still waiting for him. Kiddo, you do know that kids your age shouldn't be going around with knives, right? They're dangerous. Personally, I think you're more dangerous than my knife. Well, I guess you're right. I'm not a threat to you though. I'm a hero kid, so it would be nice if you could lay down the knife and have a peaceful chat with me instead. Shouta was currently panicking internally. Seriously, why the heck did this kid have a knife? A fucking knife, for God's sake. His patrol had been rather peaceful. It still felt strange since he had recently changed it due to being ambushed. Seriously, a beginner's mistake. Nonetheless, he was exhausted and just wanted to return home to his fiancée who waiting for him. It was just the beginning and he already wanted to head back home. His day had been peculiarly exhausting and a warm coffee, cat and bed was what he really needed right now. Hisashi was just an additional benefit. Right when he was about to take a break after having patrolled for a few hours, sit down and eat one of his jelly pouches, he saw a fucking kid sitting on the rooftop next to his. It was the middle winter, but the kid was trying to sleep outside judging by his blanket. And if that wasn't alarming enough, the fact that he was just skin and bones looked like he was about 3-4 years old when he sounded way older and carried a fucking knife surely was. Taking care of victims of abuse and such wasn't new to Shouta, but this kid was different. Even if he suffered from severe malnutrition and was really short, he couldn't have been older than 7 and Shouta had never seen such mature 7 years old. He was pretty sure that kid was younger than 7 though, which only made it weirder. The way he deduced Shouta was someone with training immediately didn't really help. So, either this kid was a genius or he just looked way younger than he was, and even then his observation skills would be really good. Snap out of it, Shouta, you need to get him to let go of his knife, it's too dangerous for a kid to carry. Kiddo, you do know that kids your age shouldn't be going around with knives, right? They're dangerous. Personally, I think you're more dangerous than my knife. If that doesn't work, telling that he's a hero might reassure him. Kids usually trust him faster when he says so. Well, I guess you're right. I'm not a threat to you though. I'm a hero kid, so it would be nice if you could lay down the knife and have a peaceful chat with me instead. Okay, that probably kinda worked. He already looks more relaxed, still wary though. Now it would be perfect if he could just let go of his knife. Kiddo, you should let go of that knife as well, you might hurt yourself. SHT, seems that he went a little overboard. The kid is even more suspicious now. Showing his hero license should probably help, right? Look kid, if you want to keep your weapon, I won't object anymore, but please be careful while handling it, you might hurt yourself. Please follow me so that we can go to the police station. I'm sure the officers will be able to help you, alright? A scoff? Seriously? What did he say wrong this time? At least he seems to believe that Shouta is a hero now, so that's an improvement. This really is going to be a long night, isn't it? I'm sorry, Mr. Hero, but I won't go to the police station. And if you try to force me, I'll run away. If that doesn't work, I'm not going down without a fight. I can't win, but that doesn't mean I can't make your life difficult. Handing me to the police is basically a death sentence. You can't really believe I'm going to follow you, can you? Shadow would have liked to believe that this was just him being childish, but he knew better than to assume that. Besides, the kid looked absolutely serious, and how can he even talk like that when he's this young? Oh well, questioning everything about this kid will bring him nowhere, that's for sure. All logic already left when a kid took out a knife, and he couldn't be bothered to try and make theories he can't even confirm. He might as well just sit down next to the boy and make small talk. He was supposed to end his patrol soon anyways, and it's not like he can just leave the kid there, right? As Shouta sat down, he could feel the kid visibly relaxing, and if he'll be able to help the boy by making his own life more difficult, a more difficult life it will be. Chapter 7. Summary. Everything is going down the drain, yay. There's still a teeny tiny bit of fluff though. Notes. Hi. I'm back with a brand new chapter. TW Child Abuse, Child Abandonment. Enjoy. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Shouta wasn't sure about how he should proceed. On one hand, he really shouldn't and couldn't just leave that child on the rooftop both of them were on. On the other hand, it wasn't like he could just take the kid, force him to come with him. If he didn't want to be taken to the police station and went as far as to say that it was a death sentence, something was most definitely wrong. Shouta wanted to help him, but he didn't know how to. It was pretty obvious that the little boy didn't trust him and wouldn't reveal any personal information about him that could give him hints or anything like that. It was well past his patrol time, and Shouta knew Hisashi was probably worried about him, although he had already sent a text to explain the situation. The boy was obviously too tired to stay awake for much longer. How he was still awake was beyond him. Shouta was sure that the boy would continue fighting to stay awake until Shouta left, and he was sure that even if he stayed, he couldn't really do anything to help without the boy telling him anything. The signs of abuse were pretty obvious. He was only skin and bones, probably severely malnourished, had scars and wounds everywhere. Shouta seriously wondered how he had missed it before. Sure, it was dark, and he sat pretty far away, but still. How did he miss them when they were so obvious? For those who are wondering, Shouta was currently sitting really close to the boy after he accepted the hero's proposal to keep him warm. Sure, he was really stiff and wary, but it was better than to die of hypothermia, especially when the clothes he was wearing were way too thin to be winter clothes. Shouta decided to wait until the kid asked him to leave or until it was morning, but honestly speaking, he was getting kind of worried about the kid being unable to sleep, and he needed to be quick and think of a method to help him relax. From Shouta's experience, he needed to make sure the kid didn't see him as a threat. He would probably relax more easily that way. Telling him he was a hero helped a lot. The kid even allowed him to stay this close to him. The problem was that he hadn't really needed any other methods for the previous victims to calm. They usually weren't nearly as complicated as the boy. That's when it hit him. He didn't want to fall asleep because it would leave him defenseless, meaning that if Shouta were to pretend he were asleep, he would probably relax enough to do so as well. Well, can only hope for it to work. It's gonna be easy since that's something Shouta does a lot. Spying and eavesdropping on people was the easiest when he was pretending to be asleep. The boy stayed awake even while the hero was pretending, and he almost lost hope, thinking it was useless. Fortunately though, that resolve didn't really last long, and he was finally able to rest easy. Now, Shouta needed a concrete plan to get information out of him. The easiest way was to slowly gain his trust. That was, however, a really slow process, and the man wasn't sure a boy as young as him would be able to hold out for long. After making sure the kid was fast asleep and wouldn't be waking up anytime soon, he started searching him, hoping to at least find a clue because you never know. Shouta felt as though he was the luckiest man alive when he saw those red shoes on the child's feet. They were really old and torn, but he knew for sure those were shoes for quirkless people. That certainly explained a lot. Someone so young, quirkless, and with such a distinctive appearance would surely be easy to identify. Now he was pretty sure that little guy sleeps over here pretty often, meaning that he must live nearby. The sun was slowly rising and Shouta started making his way home. He had a lot to discuss with Hisashi. The possibility of having a child had always existed his partner, and he was pretty sure he would be on board for a spontaneous adoption. "Do what you wait, kid, I'll be sure to come and save you." Izuku was in trouble, in deep one at that. He was so wary of that man that he ended up falling asleep when the sun was starting to rise. It was towards noon when woke up. Hisashi was going to be furious. He was supposed to be back in the morning. Lamenting on his fate wouldn't help him. Izuku knew that already. He needed to get to the house as soon as possible. The more he delayed it, the worse the punishment was going to be. Oh, how much Izuku wished he could just run away. If it weren't for his Ni-chan, he really might have, but he couldn't be that selfish. Asking her to run away when she was better off at home, where it was surely more comfortable the streets, was utterly selfish, and he knew it pertinently well. It's not like he was going to die either, right? Sure, it hurt, but it wasn't that bad, right? That's right, he was going to hang on, and when he and Himi-ni are older, they're going to be heroes and no one will be able to hurt them anymore. Speaking of heroes, that man from last night was really nice. Izuku had never seen him though. He seemed really strong. He should have been on the rankings. Is he new? But then again, heroes are usually never in these parts of town. He truly was a strange man, huh? He sure was nice though. Izuku should probably apologize for threatening him with a knife next time they meet, if they are ever going to meet again, that is. The young boy sure wanted it to happen. He may even be able to help him and Himi-ni. Then again, he would probably just put them in an orphanage, and that wouldn't end well for them either. Well, whatever, that's gore future Izuku to think about. Strangely, the walk home had seemed so much faster than usual to Izuku, definitely not something he appreciated, but what else could Izuku do? He just had to hope that he would get out of there alive, just like he does almost every day. Izuku slowly opened the door, trying to be as quiet as possible. Hisashi hates it when he makes too much noise. That would only worsen his punishment. The only times that Monster appreciated it was when he was torturing the young boy. It was obvious in his eyes that Izuku's cries of pain were music on that man's ears. What Izuku didn't expect, though, was for a big hand to yank at his hair so hard he let out a yelp. The boy knew that the monster hated it when he disobeyed, but he looked way too angry for that to have been it. Izuku could tell as he was dragged towards the kitchen by his hair that this might really be the day of his death. Even as he was thrown at the kitchen table so hard he probably had a concussion, Hisashi was quiet. Even as Izuku screamed in pain under his flames, he was quiet. Even as he begged Hisashi to stop while he carefully dragged a knife on Izuku's delicate white skin, he was quiet. Even as he heard what seemed to be music in his ears, Hisashi stayed quiet. When Izuku could barely make a sound anymore, Hisashi spoke. "Since they don't want to buy you anymore, I'll just have to find someone else who would be willing to. I'm sure quite a few people would want to buy something like you. Young, quirkless people are quite rare nowadays, you know? Your face ain't half bad either. I guess I should thank Inko for it. She was quite the beauty in her youth, which is also the only reason I agreed to marry her. That bitch couldn't even be bothered to keep herself beautiful as aged though, truly useless." His voice sounded especially cold. That's when it hit Izuku. If he didn't escape right now, he would have a fate worse than death. He would never get to meet Himi-ni again either. "Be obedient and wait for me to come home. It's not like you have anywhere else to go to anyways. Why don't you be useful for the first time in your life? I'm sure at least one rich weirdo would enjoy having you as their toy." The door slowly closed after him and Izuku made a decision. He would convince Himi-ni to run away with him. He ignored all the pain that was shooting through his body and started searching the house for anything valuable. Although they were poor, Izuku was quite sure that Hisashi had at least one hiding space where he collected money. You could say it was a habit. Since he wouldn't bother to hide this from his oh-so-useless son, it must be in his bedroom drawer. Sure enough, Izuku was right. Not that it was specially difficult to guess, although he didn't look like it. Hisashi was actually quite stupid. He always kept all his valuables in one place, somewhere he could easily access. Like Izuku already said, stupid. He quickly took his backpack, packed big water bottles, food that could last long, knives for self-defense, the money and a few other necessities. He was probably ready as you can get when you spontaneously decide to run away. He quickly took everything and started walking towards the spot Izuku and Himi-ni would usually meet up at. He just hoped his Ni-chan wouldn't be angry about needing to run away with him. But he knows that she'll probably just help treat his wounds and go with him without a single complaint. She loved him after all, and Izuku was sure of that. Sure that she loved him just as much as he loved her. Izuku was slowly getting desperate. It was almost evening and Himi still hadn't shown up. He knew something probably happened to her. There was just no way she would ditch him voluntarily. They had decided to meet up before she left last evening, meaning that something happened. She should have arrived in the afternoon, and she didn't. Izuku really wanted to go get her, but he didn't know where she lived, and he was too injured to walk too much without help. Even more so now that he was carrying 2 heavy bags with him, he ended up needing more than one, even after only taking what was necessary to their survival. He couldn't really leave them without supervision, either, since all his money and property were in there. They were all necessary for them to survive this winter. Just as he was about to lose hope, he heard familiar footsteps approaching. Finally, his Ni-chan had arrived. Ni-chan, where were you? I've been waiting for hours already. He couldn't finish his sentence when he saw her approach him crying. His Ni-chan was crying. Why was she crying? Was she injured? Is she hurting? Did her parents tell her something mean again? It didn't matter. Izuku's first priority was comforting her immediately. He hugged her tightly, so much so that his injuries hurt even more than before. He couldn't bring himself to care though. His Ni-chan was crying. That was the only thing he could think of, all his other worries forgotten. He just let her sob in his shoulder for as long as she needed to. After about half an hour, she had finally managed to calm down. Ni-chan, are you okay? Are you injured anywhere? I'm sorry, Izu, I'm okay. But my parents threw me out of the house. They said someone saw me drinking your blood, and they told them. They said I should never come back. That they would never consider a monster like me their child. Izu, what should we do? I have nowhere to go now. The way her usually cheerful voice sounded so broken, so sad, ripped Izuku's heart apart. It was all right though, because Izuku would make sure that she was going to be happy in the future. He would make sure that no one was going to hurt her ever again. Himi, let's run away. Chapter 8. Summary. My babies finally got away, yay. But they're gonna struggle since they're homeless. Notes. I'm back. I hope you enjoy this chapter as well. TW. There should be none, except if homelessness deserves one. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Our runaway. As soon as she heard those words, a series of emotions could be seen passing through her eyes: confusion, happiness, despair, and lastly, an emotion Izuku couldn't quite identify. Regardless, the boy was confused at her other reactions as well. Why wasn't she happy? Did she not want to run away? Was she still attached to her parents? Did she just not like the idea of being homeless? She would be even if we didn't run away though. Was she not happy at the idea of being together with Izuku forever? With Izuku. The realization hit him like punch in the face. Of course she was worried about Izuku. She didn't want him to be homeless because her. He realized that she thought the exact same way he did, that she felt guilty about taking away the roof over his head. She really did love him a lot, huh? Actually, I need to run away, Himi. Hisashi said he was going to sell me to someone rich so I could be their toy. I need to get as far away as possible before it's too late. Ni-chan, please run away with me. You're my only family and I never want to be separated from you. My plan has been to ask you to run away with me since he left me alone in that house. I've already packed bags with everything we would need, including all of his savings. At this statement, Izuku could see relief flood her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it had come, and hot, boiling anger replaced it. She was angry for him. Something about this made him feel warm inside. He really did have the best sister ever. No one could convince him otherwise. You're right. Do you want me to treat your wounds before we go or not? I have more than enough time, but I'm not sure the same goes for you. Her voice was filled with determination. Determination to make their lives better, determination to protect Izuku, no matter what the cost may be. Izuku responded with enough to match hers. It's not a good idea to stay here for too long since we don't know when he may come home, but wandering around with open and untreated injuries is even worse of a decision. It might get infected and we won't be able to treat it without needing to go to the hospital. Patch me up first and we're gonna get out of here immediately afterwards. I don't really know the streets that well, so you should take the lead in that aspect. Our goal is to get away from here as fast as possible. Using public transport may cost money, but it's the fastest way to get out. We may have been quite poor, but he amassed quite the big sum of money in the long run that should be able to last us for a while if we're careful. When he met Hime-ni's gaze, he saw a look full of admiration and wonder. The sight alone was enough to make blush like crazy. It was the first time anyone had looked at him that way, and Izuku didn't really know how to handle it. I've always known that you were smart, but now I think you might just be an adult stuck in a child's body. She was totally serious, and that realization made Izuku's blush deepen even further. Hime-ni, stop it. He groaned while hiding his face in his hands. Himiko only giggled happily in response. Now, let's get you patched up. Although Izuku had imagined running away with his Ni-chan countless times, had made countless plans and test runs in his head, he would have never imagined it to be this easy. As soon as Hime-ni was done treating his wounds, they made their way out of those shady streets quite easily. The girl had taken it upon her to carry both bags as Izuku was still injured, and she didn't want to take any risks, which Izuku was immensely grateful for. No thugs tried to stop or harass them, which was strange, but oh well, who knows, it might be Thugs Nation holiday, and they all decided to take a break, which Izuku was doubly so grateful for. They took a bus to another area that certainly wasn't a prim and proper one. They would stand out too much, but was still better than the one they were in currently. The driver couldn't have cared less about their appearance as long as they paid. They looked like they were about to drop dead from exhaustion and didn't even think about giving them a smile or responding to their greeting. Not that Izuku would blame them, he was sure he and Hime-ni must look horrible. Anyways, by the time they arrived, it was early morning, and they should have enough time to find somewhere to sleep before night falls. It would be preferable if they could stay inside an abandoned building, but oh well, beggars can't be choosers, can they? The next few days were spent in a blur. They were lucky enough to find a rooftop to sleep on. Sure, it was cold and gave them no cover, but it was better than the streets, where anyone could come and steal what little stuff they had. It wasn't ideal though, which is why they continued to search for somewhere better to stay. Although Izuku had packed quite a lot of food, it wasn't enough to last them very long, 2 more weeks at most. In preparation, they decided that they needed to get more money. The question was, how? They were too young to get a job, and Izuku was fairly certain that begging for money on the streets wasn't going to be of any help to them. That only left not-so-legal options. Izuku had wanted to stay on the legal side, but he had already come to terms with the fact that it would be practically impossible when they decided to run. Beggars can't be choosers after all. Still, he refused to steal from those who needed it, meaning that they would only take stuff from people who had more than enough money. Izuku didn't know why either. Rich people just seemed to enjoy visiting those parts of town and beat up homeless people on the streets while drunk. Granted, Izuku did know why. No one would dare raise a complaint against them since they were homeless for a reason, including things like quirk discrimination and more. He and Hime-ni took the option of homeless shelters in consideration as well. The problem was that Izuku couldn't go since he was recognized as quirkless because of his shoes at first glance, and most people seemed to not want to give Hime-ni any either when they saw her fangs. Although Izuku had learned his lesson and taken off his shoes the next time he tried, they recognized him as soon as he entered. There was no second one in the area either, so they had to do with what they got, as displeasing as it was. They were constantly cold and had nowhere to stay either. If they didn't get to eat, well, it would end in an absolute disaster, a disaster Izuku wasn't too keen on experiencing. So, stealing it is. Izuku couldn't have been happier, really. Sure, up until a moment ago, he was about to be beaten to death. Still, this disaster brought him something invaluable. A place to stay, in a building somewhere no one would be able to find. Seriously, he really was lucky actually. It may just have been life compensating them for everything he and his sister had to go through. A few minutes ago, Izuku found the perfect prey. They were drunk and most certainly rich if their clothes were anything to go by. They didn't seem like a good person either since they were wreaking havoc when Izuku caught sight of them. They didn't look peculiarly strong either, not that it would matter since Izuku was not about to get caught while stealing. He never had, even on his first try. The victim didn't realize anything until it was too late and he was long gone. Not really a talent he had expected to have, but he wasn't about to complain about it either. What Izuku hadn't expected though was for someone to recognize him and start giving chase. Sure, Izuku's smart, probably even smarter than quite a few adults, but that didn't mean he could outrun someone. He was just a weak, malnourished, scrawny kid. He was fairly new in the area as well. They had only arrived about a month ago, meaning that they didn't necessarily know the streets that well. Probably still better than some rich, spoiled brats though. While running, he suddenly passed by a crack in the wall. Well, to Izuku it seemed quite big, but he was sure those adults wouldn't think twice about it if they even managed to get a glimpse of it. Izuku only had because of his small size, others wouldn't see it if they weren't actively searching for it. Truly the perfect hideout though. After inspecting how it looked on the inside, he was even more convinced. First, it was a little shabby but quite spacious as well. The space was big enough for at least 5 people to live in it quite comfortably. Second, the only ways to get inside were to either get in like Izuku had, or to get in by completely destroying the walls. The little boy doubted that was ever going to happen though. Lastly, the cracks and such made it possible to light a fire inside without suffocating to death. It was truly perfect, and he couldn't wait to tell Hime-ni. "Ni-chan, you're not allowed to peek, okay?" Truthfully speaking, Izuku was pretty sure that Hime-ni already knew that they were moving. He had asked her to pack everything before they went to the place Izuku found, and his Ni-chan usually had a terrifyingly accurate intuition when it came to Izuku. Still, she didn't know what it would look like, and that was enough for Izuku to consider it a surprise. Sure enough, though it was amazing as well when she saw what it looked like inside. What homeless person wouldn't after all? A really stupid one in Izuku's humble opinion. Since Hime-ni wasn't stupid, she couldn't have been happier. After inspecting it, she couldn't help squealing and cheering while constantly jumping up and down. Her happiness was really contagious though, since Izuku started doing the same, even thought it really wasn't like him. She soon hugged him very tightly, something she always did when happy. "Izu, how come you're so lucky? Did you sell your soul to the devil or something? No matter, from now on I'm officially going to consider you my good luck charm." She lifted him and planted a small kiss on his cheek, causing the other to blush. Anne, I'm not a kid anymore, let me down." He groaned while hiding his face in his sister's sweatshirt. They bought warmer clothes after getting some money to not freeze to death, you know. Giggling, she slowly started letting him down, just as he had asked her to. "Alright, we need to set things down, it's still quite early, so why don't we eat a big dinner to celebrate your findings, not to mention that the guy you got this time seemed to be even richer than normal." She cheerfully told the small green-haired boy next to her. He immediately lightened up at the idea of having a feast. Completely filling their stomachs was quite the rare opportunity after all. They decided to spend as little money as possible to save for the future. They did eat, it's just that they never really ate a lot or anything expensive by their standards is convenience store food that isn't canned or dried. It truly was a rare opportunity after all. "Ni-chan, let's eat ramen please." His sister looked at him, full of surprise and puzzled. "Isn't katsudon your favorite food?" "Well, it's kind of expensive and homemade katsudon is worlds apart from the ones that can be bought at the convenience store. Ramen is less expensive and tastes just as good." He flashed his brightest smile at his Ni-chan, the one he known she can't resist, and just as planned she conceded. "Fine, we'll get whatever you want." Unbeknownst to them, someone was listening in on their conversation, lurking in the shadows. Chapter 9. Notes. Some of you may have guessed it, but this chapter will be from Dabataya's POV. It's gonna start with angst, but it probably won't stay for too long. What's for sure is that the next chapter probably won't contain a lot of angst. TW, child abuse again. I hope you enjoy it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Tauya felt useless, utterly useless. He could see his baby brother's wounds, he could hear his pained cries, and yet he could do nothing to stop them. It was one of those days again, the days where Endeavor would make him sit and watch. Watch as he trained his baby brother, watch as he made him suffer, watch as he made him plead for a break, for it to stop. Yet, Tauya couldn't bring himself to do anything. Yes, sometimes he would intervene and ask that Asu to stop. Sometimes he would take hits in Sho's place, sometimes he would try to divert that man's attention, but it had never been enough. Tauya was his big brother, he had and wanted to protect this precious little child. As much as he tried, he had never done enough. His brother was isolated, abused, mentally and physically, and ripped from the normal childhood he should have had, and all audit was done in the name of something as stupid as becoming the number one. He felt disgusted with that monster who called himself their father, but he was just as disgusted with himself. He had told himself over and over again that he was doing his best to help his baby brother, told himself that there was nothing else he could do, told himself that he wasn't a bad brother. However, he knew that he had to do something more, knew that he could do better, that he could give Shoto the childhood he deserved. Tauya had to make a choice. It was a difficult one, but it couldn't be delayed anymore. He couldn't just stand and watch anymore, watch as he was being beaten, watch as he cried, watch as he lost his smile. As difficult as it had seemed before, suddenly, the choice seemed so easy to make. As he watched Endeavor hit his baby brother, burn him, make him cry, he knew they had to run and never come back. Looking back on it, he should have waited, planned their escape more thoroughly, but at that moment, all he could think of was to get out of there, immediately. He scooped his baby brother up and looked that man in the eyes. "Stop it! You're hurting him!" His voice was eerily calm, so much so that even that flaming trash can seemed taken aback. The surprise didn't last for long though, soon he raised his hand, a silent threat of what was to come if he didn't step out. Still, Tauya wasn't afraid. He lit his fire and began attacking the man in front of him. He, of course, knew that there was no way for him to beat the hero, that wasn't his aim. Yes, the training grounds were sturdy, of course they were, but they were built to resist the number 2's flames, not Tauya's, whose were way hotter. What he wanted to do was burn everything here to the ground and pretend he burned to death. That trash can is resistant to fire to a certain extent, but Tauya's flames were too hot, even for him to handle. He knew that the man in front of him was selfish, and his first instinct would be to protect himself. He would still try to get his masterpiece out with him first, but realized that it was too late for that and get out alone. The plan was perfect. While Tauya was pretending to have lost control, that trash obviously tried to get Shoto, and of course, Tauya tried to protect him. What Endeavor didn't know was that Tauya already had impressive control over his flames, meaning that he was able to protect the both of them. The hero decided that it was too late for them after hearing Shoto's shouts diminish in volume. It just happened because Tauya slowly calming him down, but that monster didn't need to know. As soon as that flaming trash can exited the building, Tauya ran. He ran as fast as he could, as far as he could. They didn't have anything but their clothes and some other things Tauya had on him, but it didn't matter, they were free. What did matter was how Tauya was going to explain everything to his brother, who was utterly confused by what just happened. Of course he would have been, he just thought that they were about to burn to death. Then his brother was trying to comfort him in the midst of fire, and then they were suddenly running outside for who knows how long. It would have been weird if he wasn't confused. "I'm sorry, kid, I didn't mean to frighten you, but we needed to get out, and I didn't have the time to warn you, since the plan was made up on the spot." He looked his still confused baby brother in the eyes. "Plan? Get out? What do you mean, Tauya Ni?" Okay, now he seemed even more confused. Granted, Tauya wasn't the best speaker, but still, that was a bit too much, even in Tauya's eyes. "It's exactly as I said. We're free, show, now that that flaming trash can thinks we're dead, no one can hurt us again." They should have helped, right? His baby brother was really smart, he probably understood what Tauya's meant. What about Natsu Ni and Fuyu Ni? They're also going to think that we're dead. What about Mom? She's going to think the same. Tauya could hear the slight wobble in his voice and see the way his eyes were slowly growing wet. It broke Tauya's heart, but they simply couldn't go back. No matter what, they just couldn't. He slowly approached the child to give him a hug. "I'm sorry, Sho, but we don't have a choice. If we stay, you really might end up dying. It's not forever either. When you're grown up, we can come back. I'm sure that they'll understand why we had to do this. I know it hurts you to leave them alone with him, it hurts me as well, but that's the best we can do for now." That was probably all right? Tauya hoped that he conveyed his feelings to his brother properly. He could feel his baby brother nod in shirt, and although he should have been more concerned about the future, Tauya couldn't help smiling like an idiot. They were free. They would never have to listen to that man again, and Tauya couldn't describe just how happy he felt. Sure, the future was unsure, but as long as they were together, they would figure it out, one way or another. All they owned was a phone and just about enough money for 2 or 3 bus rides or one warm, fulfilling meal. The choice was done quickly since they needed to get away as soon as possible. Tauya's baby brother was given his hoodie to hide his more than eye-catching scar and hair and eye color. It would keep him warm as well, so it was perfect. They took off in a bus as soon as possible and went to a part of town that wasn't as good as theirs but wasn't that bad. There was no risk of them being recognized, hopefully, but they shouldn't get themselves killed as soon as they step inside, either, which was optimal in their situation. It was situated far from where they lived as well, which made it a good place to go to. The bus ride was long, and as Shoto fell asleep in his lap, Tauya couldn't help but think for hours on end. What were they going to do? How would they survive? Would Tauya be able to get a job? Sure, he was 15, meaning that he was old enough, but would anyone hire him? Would he be able to take care of a 7-year-old child alone? There were so many questions in his head, so many thoughts that Tauya barely managed to fall asleep. At least they were free, and no one would be able to hurt them again. Tauya didn't know what to do. As soon as they arrived, the rest of his savings went into buying food that was cheap, but could keep them full for as long as possible, and water bottles. They had arrived 2 hours ago, and the sun was going to fall soon. They needed somewhere to stay. The alleys surely weren't safe, and they at least needed it to be a rooftop if they wanted to be able to sleep without waking up while missing literally everything or be kidnapped. It had been 1 hour since Tauya started searching, while holding his brother's hand so as to not lose him, and they hadn't found anything. Tauya was starting to get really nervous. He didn't know what to do. Of course, he didn't let it show since he didn't want his brother to worry. Still, he was a mess inside his head. Sure, he was happy to be free, but taking care of a 7-year-old while trying to survive on the streets was not something 15-year-old Tauya was prepared for. It became even more evident when his little brother suddenly started tugging at his hand and begging him to go into really shady alleys. Yes, he loved his brother, but this really wasn't helpful. It wasn't at all. I'm sorry, Sho, but we can't go in there. It's not safe. If you want to take a break, we can try to find somewhere else, but this is too dangerous. His tone was firm but soft as he kneeled in front of his baby brother. They didn't have the time for this. It was starting to get dark, and they still needed somewhere to sleep. However, since the world was against him, his usually obedient brother started insisting. Tauya Niai, we need to go in there. I just know that we need to go in there. His eyes slowly started to water and his voice was wobbly. Tauya didn't know what to do. It was dangerous, but his brother was never one to act without reason or lie, meaning that something really happened. Sighing, Tauya reluctantly agreed and let his brother lead him through the labyrinth these alleys were. He was starting to think that they were lost when his brother suddenly stopped in front of a wall. At first, Tauya didn't understand why his brother stopped, but after inspecting it more closely, he saw an opening just barely big enough for him to pass through. He quickly told his brother to follow him silently. There may have been people inside, and Tauya wasn't willing to risk putting the boy in more danger than necessary. As silently as possible, they started walking through the short tunnel, and sure enough, there were people talking inside. He was wary at first, ready to use his flames at any given moment, but slowly relaxed as he saw that the ones inside were children. One looked like he couldn't have been more than 4, and the other looked like they were about 8 years old. Isn't katsudon your favorite food? Well, it's kind of expensive, and homemade katsudon is worlds apart from the ones that can be bought at the convenience store. Ramen is less expensive and tastes just as good. The boy smiled, and it was so bright Tauya was nearly blinded. Fine, we'll get whatever you want. The girl looked like she couldn't put up a fight anymore, and Tauya could understand why. No one would have been able to. He really didn't mean to listen in on their conversation, and he really didn't hear a lot, but they seemed to be in the same situation as them, meaning that they were homeless. They didn't seem dangerous either. Maybe he could ask them if they could spend the nights here until they find somewhere else to stay. That wouldn't be too rude, right? Before he even had the time to react, Shoto started running towards them. Wait, Sho? He said that out loud, didn't he? Judging by the fact that they are looking at him and Sho right now, he sure did. Hi, I'm Shoto. What's your name? He really was done for, wasn't he? As much as Tauya loved his baby brother, that's not how you get to know people. He could at least have put some emotion in his voice or not outright ignored the girl. Well, who knows, they might like eccentric people, right? Chapter 10. Summary. A kind of funny chapter or not? Notes. Hello, I am here to give you a new chapter. I'm quite proud of myself for having updated so often and having been able to answer to all the comments up till now. TW. Mentions of child abuse and death? See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Hi? Waya, bravo! What an amazing beginning, right? If Talia could just disappear right this instant, he would have taken the opportunity. What kind of greeting is this awkward? Well, at least the boy doesn't seem too disturbed by Shou's weird introduction. Can't say the same for the girl though. She looked as though she were ready to kill if any of us were a threat to the boy. I'm sorry. Shou isn't usually like this. He seems to really like you. At least his baby brother had the decency to nod and confirm Talia's statement with quite a lot of enthusiasm at that, which was really weird in his opinion. Well, at least the girl seems to have calmed down. Hello, pleased to meet you, and as pleased as I am, it would be nice to know how you found our hideout and what you're doing here. Okay, that was totally unexpected. The change in demeanor was really unsettling. Luckily, he seemed more wary of Talia than Shoto. If it were just him, he might just have been kicked out right away. Shoto was actually the one who led me to this place. I don't know how he found it either since it's our first day here. And as for why we were actually looking for somewhere to sleep and, well, Shoto led me to your hideout and I wanted to check it out. When we went inside, well, I didn't really know what to do and Shoto just ran towards you and, well, yeah, that's it. Seriously, this was goddamn awful. Even Talia himself didn't understand why he just blurted out the truth without a second thought, and not to mention the nervous way he talked. That was so not like him. Look, even his baby brother was looking at him like he had just grown a second head. This was the most embarrassing way he had ever greeted anyone. Little did he know that it wouldn't stay at the top forever. The boy looked at Talia, and if evaluating him, a few seconds later, he seemed satisfied with result and started talking. Okay, please sit down. We haven't really unpacked yet, so if you don't want to sit down on the ground, you could wait for us to get it done. It's only gonna take a minute. He flashed a bright smile at Talia and God, was this unnerving to him. This was just outright weird. He sounded so much like an adult. Actually, could he be an adult stuck in a child's body? As the little boy started blushing furiously, Talia realized that he said that out loud and quickly prepared to apologize when he was interrupted by the previously quiet girl bursting into laughter. Talia was confused to say the least. That was not the reaction he expected. Talia's confusion must have shown on his face since the girl stopped and started explaining the situation. I actually told him the exact same thing not too long ago. We were preparing to run away, and he just blurted out an entire plan in front of me and said it in such a mature way that I ended up feeling like I was the child instead. You should have seen his face. He was as red as a tomato, I swear. Wait, you can actually see his face now, can't you? At the last part, the girl's eyes lit up in excitement as she hurried towards the poor boy. Himi nii, stop, it's embarrassing. That only seemed to amuse the older girl further as she started slowly tickling the boy to get his hands off of his face. Talia and Shoto couldn't mask their amusement at the way the pair in front of them interacted. After they all had a good laugh, except the boy, who had just barely managed to stop blushing in embarrassment, they quickly set up the blankets on the ground for all of them to sit on. Surprisingly, his baby brother stayed at the younger boy's side, clinging to him as if he were his lifeline. As such, the talk that was interrupted earlier continued. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Izuku Midoriya, 5 years old, and the girl next to me is my sister, Himeko Toga, 8 years old. We both prefer to go by our first names, so please call us as such. Talia nodded and decided he should introduce himself next. My name is Talia Todoroki and I'm 15. As you already know, the kid next to you is Shoto, he's 7. We both prefer to go by our first names as well. As much as he didn't like the idea of giving strangers their real names, this was the least he could do when he had given them their real names as well. The boy nodded and stated speaking, Look, I have nothing against the idea of the both of you staying with us for however long you want, but there are 2 conditions. Talia tensed up at his serious tone, unbefitting of a child. First, as much as we can provide for you, you should at least try to earn some money as well since our pockets aren't infinite either, and we survive by stealing the money of rich guys who come here to cause trouble every now and then. This seemed really reasonable, actually, still very generous on their part. Them being willing to share their money and hide out with strangers is a miracle in and of itself. Talia was still anxious for the second one though. At Talia's nod, the boy continued, Secondly, I'll be honest with you. You don't seem like typical homeless kids, and that's easy to see in every aspect of your being. Be it your clothes, your apparent weight, or your behavior, you seem to come from a pretty good background. The problem is that you need to tell us everything possible about you so that we can prepare if anything comes to bite us in the ass later on. I'm sure you have your circumstances and want to keep your secret, and I understand, but it's necessary if we want to live together. Although Taoya wasn't exactly pleased at the idea of sharing their past, he had to admit that the boy Izuku was absolutely right. He couldn't hide it from them, and what Taoya and his baby brother would get in exchange was already more than enough to agree. But before he could say anything else, the boy spoke up again. Of course, just having you share your story might not be fair, and I'm willing to do the same if we want to cohabit. Keeping secrets would only cause problems later on. Although I can't speak for Himi ni, I'm willing to do it. This was the part that really surprised Taoya. Was this boy a literal angel on earth? That might be why Sho got so attached to him immediately. Yes, this must a gift from the heavens. It's actually quite the long story. Izuku nodded, saying for him to go ahead and talk. Have you ever heard of quirk marriages? As the story went on, he could feel the weight on him lessen. He hadn't known just how good it felt to talk about your problems until today. When the story came to an end, they all sat there in silence before Sho spoke up. Izu? Why are you crying? Are you okay? He already calls him by a nickname. Well, he sure is quick to make friends. Wait, crying. When Izuku saw the worried expressions other three people in the room, he started speaking in a wobbly voice. Well, I already knew that Endeavor was a trashy person, but hearing that he treated his own children and wife that way just confirmed that he doesn't deserve to be a hero. He spoke so softly that it was barely above a whisper. I know that not everyone is a fan his, but most people still consider him be a hero worthy of respect. It feels kind of weird that you already thought of him as shitty and undeserving of the title of hero before hearing our story. His baby brother replied, still blunt as ever. Izuku sent him a wobbly smile, if it could even be considered a smile. Shoto seemed absolutely heartbroken at the younger boy's expression. Taoya knew that Sho wasn't the touchy-feely kind of person, so he was surprised to see his brother hug the boy. Well, he wasn't that surprised since even Taoya felt like giving him a hug when he saw those years flow down his soft cheeks. Actually, he killed my mother. The only reason they heard this sentence was the absolute quiet that reigned in their new home. Everyone sucked in a sharp breath at this revelation. Izuku continued, voice less wobbly than before. It was D during a VV villain attack. My entire HH house W was burned D down, and they W weren't QQ quick enough to S save my mother. She W was too I injured to go to W work that D day and decided to SS stay at home. If I had intervened E earlier, she might have B been able to go to W work, and she might N not have D died. Taoya knew about the amount of people that died during Endeavor's villain chases and fights he knew, but hearing it from one of his victims directly still couldn't help but shock him. Sure, he had always thought of him as an abusive asshole, but this changed his thinking to Taoya. He was now closer to a villain, a murder than to anything else. Just as he had done, the boy explained his story. The way his father used to beat his mother, the way he started beating Izuku when she died, the way he was starved, burned and broken over and over again. Strangely, the more he talked, the calmer and steadier he became, as though the rest of the abuse he faced didn't really hurt him, as if he wasn't the one to suffer, but was merely reading out of a storybook. Still, by the time he was done, by the time he had told them about how he was nearly sold as some toy, total silence filled the room. No one dared to even breath. His baby brother spoke after a moment of silence. You know, it's okay to cry if you're hurting. You don't need to hold back. Although his words were stiff and blunt, that was all it took for Izuku to break, to let go of any control he might have had. As Izuku continued crying, his heart broke. He just sat and listened to the boy's broken sobs. The worst part was that he still muffled them, as if out of habit, a habit the siblings were all too familiar with. Everything about his cries was heart-wrenching, so much so that both his sibling and Himiko started to do the same. As much as Taoya tried, he couldn't keep the tears away either. The memories of the abuse his family suffered at that monster's hands came flashing back. He didn't join the hug, he wasn't crying loudly either, none of them were, but it was comforting nonetheless to be surrounded by people who believed you, understood your pain. Taoya knew, after this night, he wouldn't be able to let go of them anymore. He would protect those broken children because as the oldest, that's what he had to do. I'm sure that they're still alive somewhere. Tell the police to keep an eye open for anything that catches their attention. Don't let the news of their survival spread. If it does, know that you will held accountable. I can't my masterpiece slip away again now, can I? His eerily calm and cold tone did not let the deep, frightening anger that was sleeping underneath show. When he found them, they would wish they had never tasted freedom, and this would be his revenge. Chapter 11. Summary. Basically, Shoto being cute and Shota having a heart attack tip. It wasn't caused by cuteness. Notes. I'm back? Listen, I know it took quite a bit of time to write this chapter, but it's here now, right? Well, I was just lacking inspiration, and that's why it took so long. The thing is that I have everything roughly planned out till a certain moment in time, and well, those are more like, fluffy chapters of Izuku as a kid before he grows up a little. I know it's not really fluffy right now, but there should be fluffiness in the future since, well, future chapters are supposed to be family fluff. If someone has a suggestion, I'm open, but if it takes too long, I'm either gonna have to think of some on my own, and I can't make any promises on the quality, or I'm just right up going to make time skip and try to write someone shots about them later on. TW Panic Attack and well, a core. Anyways, I hope you enjoy it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. So, what are we supposed to call you? Shadow didn't understand what he meant. He already told Izu his name, what else was he supposed to call him? It didn't really make sense, but Izu can't be wrong. Shoto might just not understand since he's half asleep. That makes sense, he should just tell Izu to call him Sho. He can't just ignore the boy's question after all. Before he could say anything, Taoya Niai beat him to it. What do you mean? We already told you our names last night, didn't we? Well, we can't just go around and call you by your real names, you're supposed to be dead. Izu had a quizzical expression on his face, as if he were just telling them the most obvious thing in existence. That must mean that we're stupid since according to Izu's expression, it was obvious. Izu can't be wrong after all, you can just call me Sho, can't you? Usually, Shoto wouldn't just ask someone he had met the day prior to call him by a nickname, he wouldn't have called them by one either. Izu was different though. Shoto felt like he had known him his whole life. Even though that's not possible, he also knew that he never wanted to be separated from him again, no matter what. So, he likes Izu and Izu like Himiko. Since Izu is always right, that must mean that Himiko is likable. If Izu trusts her, so will Shoto, and since he now likes Himiko as well, she can call him by nickname as well. Taoya Niai is acting strange though, since yesterday, he doesn't really act like himself anymore, especially around Izu. Now he's looking at Shoto like he said something strange. He doesn't understand what's strange about him though. He likes Izu and Himiko, that's why he wanted them to call him Sho. The really strange one is his Niai-san. He's acting really out of character. Well, it doesn't matter though, for now, he's happy enough to have Izu call him Sho. His brother can wait. Okay, I'll call you Sho then. Izu's smile was breathtaking and blinding. He really is an angel, isn't he? His cheeks look really soft as well. Would Izu agree to let him poke them if he asked? Well, no better way to find out than to do it. Izu, can I poke your cheeks? They look really soft. Why is Taoya Niai looking at him like that? Did he do something wrong? When he turned his head to look at the little boy in front of him again, his cheeks were red. I don't see why and not. Right after getting his permission, Shoto didn't hesitate and went right after his cheeks. As expected, they were super soft. He could hear his brother and Himiko giggling at the other end of the room, but he paid them no mind. He was too preoccupied by what was in front of him. Izu simply looked too cute to be human, especially when his cheeks were red. He really couldn't be human. He's just too kind and brilliant to be. He literally radiates light, and Shoto wasn't kidding. His smiles are really blinding. Shoto couldn't help but wonder why anyone would harm someone like Izu. He was too good for this world. After a few minutes, he was finally satisfied and made Izu sit in his lap so that he could hug him. The boy was surprisingly small for his age, or was Shoto simply too big? Well, not that it mattered, Izu fit in his embrace perfectly and Shoto felt more complete than he ever had before, like a missing puzzle piece was clipped into place. While he was still there, it didn't really seem necessary to listen in on their conversation to Shoto after Taoya Niai had told them to call him Dabai. He simply relaxed, feeling the warmth of the other on his skin did that to him. He never wanted to let go again and conveniently, Izu didn't try to get away either. For the first time in what felt forever, Shoto couldn't help but smile. He felt happier than he could ever remember feeling in the 7 years of his life. Shota was slowly growing desperate. It had been 1 month since the boy had gone missing, and he could find absolutely no traces whatsoever. Right after meeting him, Shota had gone home to tell his fiancée Hisashi about the news. As he had predicted, the man was absolutely ecstatic and couldn't wait to see the child that had caught Shota's attention. He couldn't have possibly known the kid would go missing, but couldn't help blaming himself all while knowing it. God knows what could have happened to the kid while out for so long. After having talked with his fiancée, Shota immediately paid the police station a visit. He needed to find the kid as quickly as possible and would not shrink on sacrificing his sleep to do so. As he had expected, the kid had been pretty easy to find. Not even a day had passed, and yet he had found nothing while searching the house, absolutely nothing. The same went for pretty much every area the kid could have been in. He had literally searched everywhere and gotten absolutely no results. A month of searching everywhere, using every connection he could, and Shota still had absolutely no lead. All he could do was mull over his mistakes, think about what he could have done, should have done, and think about everything that could have gone wrong with the kid during the time he had gone missing. Shota knew that it wasn't a healthy way of thinking. Of course he did when his fiancée never forgot to tell him when blamed himself. He knew it pertinently well, and yet he couldn't help it. Just as was about to fall into those thoughts again, he got a call, and when he realized who it was from, he got his hopes up. Naimasa. As soon as he read that name, he literally jumped onto his phone. Do you have any news? Shota knew the chances were slim, but he couldn't help the feeling that was bubbling inside of him. Yes, we actually do. The detective sighs, voice weary and uncertain. I'm not sure if you'll like it though. Shots could feel his guts turn at the tone his friend employed. He couldn't form any words, countless scenarios playing in his head, and they certainly weren't good ones. We're currently at. I think you should see this for yourself. Shota immediately hung up and readied himself to go out, ignoring his fiancée's questions in the process. He needed to get there quickly and make sure his kid was okay. When he arrived at the scene and saw blood leaking from around the shelf in the warehouse, he ignored all the police officers talking to him and just ran forward. He would never be able to forgive himself if anything happened to the boy due to his negligence, never. It may seem horrible on his part, especially considering the state the core was in, but when Shota identified the body as belonging to an adult, he couldn't help but feel relieved. His kid wasn't injured, sure he may still be out there suffering, but at least he wasn't dead. As long as the boy was still alive, Shota would do anything in his power to find and save him. For now though, he should focus on the lead his friend had found. He turned towards the detective and was about to ask him what the lead was, but that was apparently unnecessary considering that the man started talking without Shota needing to do anything. Midoriya Hisashi, 30 years old, and the father of Midoriya Izuku, the kid you're searching for. We still don't know how he died, but we should find out after the autopsy. His death was painful by the looks of it. Burns and cuts everywhere, most likely tortured to death. The culprit is still unknown. We found him after being notified of a disgusting smell forming from in here by a passerby. Shota felt a mix of emotions. He was relieved to have finally gotten a hint as to where the kid was, but now that he had seen what happened to the man in front of him, he couldn't help but fear for the boy. He didn't want to think about it, he really didn't, but he couldn't stop the thought from crossing his mind. What if the boy was dead? What if he was in a similar situation to the corpse in front of him? What if he was being hurt right when Shota was seeing this? What if he was but a core slowly decomposing in an old warehouse with no one to find him? The thought alone made Shota grasp for air. It made his stomach churn in disgust. It made lose the ability to think clearly. Shota couldn't breathe at the thought of that small and fragile-looking child suffering somewhere no one could see him, where no one could hear his screams, where no one would listen to his pleas for help. Rationally speaking, he was aware that the possibility of him just having run away was way higher judging by the state the house was in. He knew the child was smart enough to survive on his own. He knew it, but his irrational side wasn't taking any of this SHT. He was just a child, a 5-year-old child. Even if he were to have run away, what if he was dying of hunger on the streets, the people passing refusing to help? What if he was dying because of the cold? It was in the middle of winter after all. What if he was kidnapped by some psycho? What if he was sold by human traffickers? Shota had been in the business for only 2 years, but it was more than enough for him to know what could happen to kids on the streets. He knew all too well, and it really wasn't doing him any favors. He felt his chest tighten, and he became unable to hear the noise around him. All he could think of was his child crying, screaming, and begging for someone to come and help him. The thought alone was nauseating. Just as he was about to have a breakdown, he could feel strong arms wrapped around him. He recognized this presence. It was Hisashi. The warmth of the person he loved did reassure him, but the tightness in his chest wouldn't go away. He felt like he was suffocating, drowning in an endless sea of suffering and remorse. Slowly, he could feel his breaths adjusting to the ones he felt the pressure of on his skin. He could hear the whispers of his fiancée telling him to breathe and follow his rhythm. He could feel the tapping of a finger on his shoulder and a warm embrace. As his breathing slowly steadied and he calmed down, he finally spoke. "Zashi, what if it's too late when we find him? What if he's currently suffering without anyone there to help him?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but Hisashi sucking in a short breath was an indicator that he had heard what Shota said nonetheless. For a moment he finally spoke. "Worrying about it won't do you any good. For now, we should just focus on finding him and hope nothing happened. If he's as smart as you told me he is though, I'm sure he'll be all right. Who knows, the next time you see him, he might even have become a figure that's so important, no one would dare lay a finger on him thanks to his smarts." That got a snort out of Shota, one even he wasn't expecting. The image of everyone groveling at his feet and revering a 5 years old was just too funny. "Yeah, you're right. We're gonna save him, no matter what." Somewhere far away, a certain green head was sleeping, curled up against another boy's side, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of Shota's trouble. Chapter 12. Summary. Basically, everything goes to SHT again, evil giggle. Notes. Hello, I hope y'all missed me, and if you didn't, then that's a pity. Sorry it took so long to get done, but my phone didn't have any battery and my charger broke, and I couldn't get a new one for reasons I won't disclose. I decided to simply write it on my computer today. I decided to skip 2 years, meaning that Izuku is now 7, and then write someone shots that explain what happened during the 2 years. I'm really tired, so this might not be written in the way I usually do. I'm talking about this note, not the chapter. TW, kidnapping, human trafficking, panic attack kinda. I hope you enjoy the chapter. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's final event. I'm sure most of you have caught wind of it by now, but today's final product is a truly special and rare one. Now I hope you enjoy it. Izuku's head hurt, a pain he was all too familiar with. He was pretty sure he had a minor concussion. His head was fuzzy and he couldn't quite think straight. What he could make out though was the sound of a crowd cheering and shouting things he couldn't really make out. Everything around him was dark and the ground he was lying on was cold. All he remembered was saying goodbye to Dabai Niai and then playing with Shachin and Himi Ni. What happened afterwards? Right, they heard some noise coming from the entrance and prepared for a fight. Shachin was about to get hit and Izuku took it for him. He couldn't really remember anything happening afterwards. Did he black out? Oh God, if so, what happened to them? Did they get out safely? What happened after he was knocked unconscious? Did they get hurt? Where was he? So many questions were swirling in his mind, but he couldn't seem to focus on one at once. His thoughts were a complete mess and his headache was only growing harder and harder to ignore. His thoughts were cut short by blinding light overtaking his vision and much to his displeasure, it did nothing to help the ever-growing pain in his skull. Not being able to take the pain growing the longer he refused to close them, he was forced to shut his emerald eyes that were now filling with tears. After what seemed like an eternity, filled with cries and cheers, with people shouting what seemed to be numbers, his eyes, all thought still very sensitive, could finally be opened. In front of him, he could see a lot of people with varying expressions, some filled with disappointment, others with frustration and others with joy. To his side, he could see his sister who had just woken up, and to his other side, he could see a tall, brown-haired man wearing a mask and suit. Now that he thought about it, why was everyone wearing masks? What were they dressed up for? Why was he surrounded by bars? Wait, he was inside a cage, wasn't he? Why was he in a cage? Where was he? Why were those people yelling numbers? What was happening? That's when it hit him. Izuku was being sold. If someone had asked Izuku whether or not he thought of himself as naive a few hours ago, his answer would have been a definite no. Most people his age still had a childlike innocence. They didn't know the world like Izuku did. They didn't know that there were people who didn't love their children. They didn't know that there were people who hurt others because they liked seeing them suffer and cower in fear. They didn't know what it felt like to be hurt beyond a few bruises and scraps from playing. They didn't know what it felt like to hope and pray every day that you would at least get a little food so as to not starve to death. They didn't know what it felt like to beg for forgiveness in hope of living to see the sun rise again. They didn't know the cruel reality of this world like Izuku did, because Izuku never got the choice of retaining this innocence. It was something he wished to have as well, but couldn't, not if he wanted to live. So yes, Izuku wouldn't have called himself naive, not when he knew as much about this world as he did. At least, that's what he would have thought before this happened. Now though, he wasn't so sure anymore. Sure, he knew a lot, but it might have just been the tip of the iceberg, seeing as he hadn't even been able to understand what was happening earlier. To be honest, this realization made him sick. He just couldn't believe that he and his Nichan were being sold as though they weren't human beings. He couldn't believe there were people who were disappointed at not being able to buy them. He couldn't believe there were people who were exited at the idea of acquiring human beings. He couldn't believe there were people who were ecstatic at seeing the price going up. He couldn't believe there were people who thought of this as normal. Izuku felt as thought there were millions of ants gnawing at his skin. He felt as thought his lungs were being squeezed and his stomach turned upside down. Was this really the world he vowed to protect? Were those really the people he wanted to save? His dream had always been to be a hero, but now he wasn't really sure anymore. Were they really worth it? It felt as thought his entire world was collapsing. He didn't know how to talk. He didn't know how to cry. He didn't know how to breathe. All the principles he had set for himself since he was but a little child were crumbling right in front of him. He simply didn't really know how to live anymore. It felt as thought he was drowning. His entire body was heavy. He couldn't hear. He couldn't feel 6LL. No matter how much he struggled, he simply couldn't reach the surface. Was it really worth struggling? It would be easier to just let go, right? Right, he should just let go. Suddenly, he could hear whimpers and cries, choked out words, pleads, reassurances. His body was engulfed by a warm embrace. Who did it belong to? It felt so familiar, so comforting. Right, it's Himi. That's right, she still needs him. He can't give up just yet. His Nichan is still waiting for him. He could feel his senses slowly returning to him. There was no crowd anymore. Where were they going to? Someone was pushing their cage in a corridor. Surrounding them were even more children. Some were tied up and dragged by adults, others were still in a cage and sleeping. There were also those who were awake and yelling, begging for someone to save them. The sight alone was enough to nearly make him panic again, but his Nichan's soft yet firm grip kept him grounded, as did her whispers of comfort. All thought it became increasingly obvious as time passed that she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to do so with him. He couldn't continue worrying her so much. He needed to calm down and tell her he was okay. As much as he wanted to do so, the words simply wouldn't come out, and as much as he thought of it as a good idea before, he became increasingly conscious that whatever he may have said would have probably only worried her more, so it was probably for the best. Instead, he opted to show her the brightest smile he could offer, and fortunately, it seemed to work. That's right, he needed to be strong. He couldn't let his Nichan worry for him. Her own worries were probably already a lot to take care of, and he shouldn't add his own to it. The rest of the ride was calm. He held Himi tight, and she did the same to him. The man with the mask he saw before was humming happily as they slowly approached a door. Contrary to the noisy hallways from before, the room they were brought into was quiet and neat. Another man, who also wore a suit and mask, waited in the middle, but started speaking as soon as they entered. He wants them asleep. All right, the other exclaimed before getting to his knees to face Izuku and his sister. Please behave well when you wake up. Who knows, you might even be able to live quite the long life if you do. He didn't wait for another second before taking out a strange mask and putting it on. The masked man released a strange purple gas, and Izuku could feel that it was becoming increasingly difficult to stay awake. I wonder why the boss wanted us to sell them together. They would have earned us way more money separately. Not to mention that other kid with such a powerful ice quirk, he would have given us a small fortune. Too bad we were told to leave him alone. The brown-haired man said in a chipper tone. It is not our place to question the boss's order. We are to simply do what we're told. He must have his own reasons that are simply beyond our reasoning. At least Shachin didn't get caught up in all of this. I hope doesn't beat himself up over what happened to us too much were Izuku's last thoughts before he fell into his sweet, long-awaited sleep. 10 hours ago. Shoto was really happy for his Niai-san. He had finally managed to get a stable job at a restaurant after struggling for 2 years. The boy knew pertinently well that all the odd jobs he did had a low pay compared to the amount of labor that was demanded of him, not to mention that they were not regular and only asked for his help from time to time. He also knew that Dabai Niai, as he had asked to be called, didn't really like pickpocketing. He still did it without complaining when it was necessary though. The job paid quite well. The only problem was that he wouldn't be there to accompany him and Izu as much as he used to. Although Izu never said anything, Shoto knew that he felt the same way. Anyways, he was playing with Himi-ni and Izu when they heard people talking. The only bad point about their hideout was that there was only one entry that also served as the exit, meaning that they couldn't run away. It didn't really matter though. Shoto was quite proud of how much stronger he had gotten over the 2 years since he ran away. Combined with Himi-ni's knives, Shoto was sure they would win, even if they were up against adults. What he didn't expect though, was for the 2 men who blocked the exit to have plant-based quirks, and quite the powerful one as well. Maybe they shouldn't have jumped into action as soon as the men came into their line of sight. That's right, maybe they shouldn't have, but they did. Even without the adults trying to fatally injure them, winning this fight was practically impossible with the direction in which things were going. Shoto knew that the only way for them to make it out of there was to use his fire. Just because he knew it didn't mean he necessarily wanted to. Yes, after talking with Izu about his problems, he came to accept the fact that it was his fire and not his father's. It just wasn't enough to overwrite all the pain he had to go through since his quirk manifested. Still, if it was to help them, maybe he should really use it. That's right, he should. Just as he was about to use his flames, a distant memory resurfaced again. It was a cold winter night, and unfortunately for them, even being cuddled in a lump together wasn't enough to warm their bodies. Shoto was alright since he had a high tolerance to the cold, but he could feel Izu shivering in his arms. Shoto was unsure of what to do when he suddenly got an idea. Dabai Niai, how about we light a fire? His Niai-san didn't really seem to like the idea, but they didn't really have any other choice. He clearly looked conflicted as he glanced over towards Izu, and that's when Shoto understood. Right, maybe it isn't really a good idea to use fire in front of him. It would probably frighten Izu. As though he was reading their minds, Izu looked at them and smiled one of his sunshine smiles. Shoto wasn't exaggerating when he said that they were blinding, they really were. It's alright, I don't think I'm peculiarly afraid of fire. Both Shoto and his Niai-san shot a skeptical look towards the boy, but he really did seem to be honest, so they agreed. Everything was going well and Izu didn't seem peculiarly nervous until the fire was lit. Suddenly, he ran towards the exit, and when Shoto followed, he saw Izu crouched down on the ground throwing up. Shoto just stood there, completely dazed, until Izu turned to look at him, their siblings, who had arrived moments ago, and said, I don't know why this happened, I'm still not peculiarly afraid of fire. Why did this happen? His expression showed that he was truly confused, and none of the people surrounding Izu, including Shoto, knew what to tell him. Eventually, the fire was extinguished, and they all went to bed with their own thoughts. Except for Izu, everyone made a silent vow to never light a fire here again, lest they did something to hurt the little boy who, albeit being strong, seemed so very fragile in their arms. This moment of distraction didn't last long, but it was enough for a plant user to throw a blow he was unable to block. He closed his eyes, silently waiting for the pain to follow. It was alright, it didn't matter, he was already used to pain anyways. The pain never came. After a second, Shoto opened his eyes, and all he found was a knocked-out Izuku. Both him and Himi-ni couldn't help but stare at him, as if waiting for him to wake and tell them he was fine. Instead, their vision was crowded by a purple smoke. Sorry, but we don't have time to play anymore. We need to get them as quickly and uninjured as possible. I'm sure you understand, right? Shoto suddenly crumbled to the ground, unable to move. His eyelids felt heavy, and he just wanted to give in and fall asleep, but he couldn't. he still needed to help Izu and Himi ni. Izu. The last thing he saw was his loved ones being dragged to go who knows where. He failed them. If only he had used his fire sooner, if only he had been stronger. If he had, would he have been able to save them? Everything went black. Chapter 13. Summary. Hitoshi finally makes an appearance. Izuku is going to suffer. Shoto is taken back to hell. Dabai lost everything in the span of one day. Notes. Hello. It took longer to write this, but it's for a good reason. The chapter is longer than my usual ones, and I'm still not sure if I'll continue working that way or if I'll write shorter ones again. Well, all I can say is that this chapter is going to be pretty dark, and I'm not sorry. TW child abuse, human trafficking, kidnapping, messions for now giggle of human experimentation, a muzzle for Hitoshi. Thanks for reading. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Hitoshi had been told to stop talking for as long as he could remember. Well, that's actually not entirely true. His parents used to love him before he manifested his quirk, that is. It all started going down the drain when he turned 4. Mama, Papa, Hitoshi squealed while quickly running into his parents' room. They were heavy sleepers, contrary to their child, but the noise woke Hitoshi's parents up nonetheless. It's my birthday. They shouldn't have been surprised at being woken up at 5 in the morning and nearly squished to death by the boy, but who in their right mind would be prepared for it? Surely not them. Hitoshi was in a really good mood. The excitement of his upcoming birthday didn't allow him to get more than 3 hours of sleep that night, but that couldn't have hindered the boy since he has always had insomnia. Of course, that didn't mean it was pleasant, but since it was his birthday, he couldn't have been happier. He would get his quirk soon, and he would get to eat cake and maybe even ice cream, which was a rare occurrence in his household. So yes, Hitoshi was excited, and he couldn't have been happier. The hardest part of the day was waking up at 3 in the morning and having to wait until it was an acceptable time to wake his parents up. In his humble opinion, having waited until 5 o'clock was already enough. To be completely honest, the fact that it was his birthday wasn't the only reason for the boy's excitement. He had a plan that would be put into motion on his birthday. You see, Hitoshi has always wanted a cat. They were just too cute for him to resist the temptation of having one. The problem was that he knew his parents disliked animals in general, and his request would thus be shot down immediately. If it were any normal day, that is. After careful consideration, he deduced that the best time to state his case would be on his birthday. It would be significantly harder to reject him when it was supposed to be his special day. Not to mention that 4th birthdays are considered even more special than normal ones since it means that the children are at the age where they usually get their quirks. All in all, it was a carefully crafted plan. He even went so far as to observe them to figure out which time of the day they were the most relaxed and would agree to his requests the easiest. For your information, the answer was that it would be best to ask them at 4 p.m. He waited and waited until it was finally the time. Now all that was left to do was to ask them and pray for it to work. Mama, Papa, there's something I wanted to ask you for. Both his parents turned towards him with suspicion written all over their faces. Who could blame them? After all, the son they knew never hesitated to voice his opinion on something, so much so that it was quite troublesome for them, and he never looked at anyone with those puppy dog eyes, not even when he asked for something from them, usually that is. So yes, he was being utterly suspicious. That doesn't mean they could refuse immediately though, it was his birthday after all. What is it, dear? His mother asked in an already tired tone which Hitoshi knew he was the cause of. Had he been too suspicious? Well, nothing he could do about it now, he should just go for it. Mama, can we get a cat, please? His eyes were starting to tear up, absolutely unintentionally of course. His mother's tired eyes seemed to be getting even more tired at the sudden request, and Hitoshi's tears started to become more genuine at the sight. He already knew it was lost fight, but he couldn't help it. He really wanted to get a cat after all. Hitoshi, you know that we don't like animals, and besides, who would take care of it if we did get it? Of course it woo. She was interrupted by the boy, suddenly exclaiming, Mama, let's get a cat, please. Suddenly, the woman stood up and started walking towards the door, not bothering to put on shoes or get her purse. Her husband, seeing her act so strangely, quickly ran to her side and shook her in the hope of getting her back to normal, and getting back to normal she did. As soon as she snapped out of it, she looked towards Hitoshi and then towards her husband. She grabbed the man's arm and quickly dragged him towards their bedroom, leaving a very confused Hitoshi behind. They refused to talk to him or let him speak all in all for an entire week afterwards, and when his father spoke for the first time in what had seemed like an eternity to the boy, his words were not exactly pleasant either. "Get in the car right now." The adult didn't bother say anything else and answered any of Hitoshi's questions that of course weren't said out loud. Eventually, the boy relented and got into the car as his father had instructed. His mother was already inside, waiting for them. The boy had a really bad feeling that just wouldn't go away, but he decided to just ignore it since there wasn't really anything he could do about it anyways. The ride was silent, and not a comfortable one. The air was heavy around them, and the longer it lasted the worse the feeling became. It was as if something was shouting at him to just get away. He couldn't really do anything though, so he just continued staying quiet. Deep down, he knew something was wrong, but he was sure nothing bad would happen with his parents around. Sure, they may have been acting strange for the last week, but they still loved him, didn't they? They soon arrived in front of a big building, in a neighborhood Hitoshi didn't recognize. They had been driving for at least an hour or two, so he supposed it was normal. His parents gave him a paper and asked him to go into the building and give it to the next adult he saw. Hitoshi did as he was told, although every cell of his being was screaming at him not to do it. He couldn't disobey his parents now, could he? Maybe if he did as he was told, they would start behaving like normal again, right? They would, right? Who was he kidding? Of course they would. After all, they loved him, didn't they? It had been a long time since Hitoshi thought about the past. It might be because he was about to die and because of a stupid mistake at that. Really, he shouldn't have reacted the way he did. It's just that when you have had a really rough time, being called a villain won't really be pleasant. Still, it was stupid to hit his classmate because of something so trivial. He was used to being called that after all. It's just that no one had given him food the day before. He was locked in the closet as well and had a nightmare, making it impossible to sleep for the rest of the night. Additionally, his wonderful muzzle didn't even allow him to talk back and tell him just how wrong he was. So he was really irritated, and he just decided to go for it and hit the guy, which was a really bad idea. He ended up getting beaten half to death, and his teachers called the foster family he was currently staying at, which resulted in him being beaten by them as well, and then locked into the closet. It must have been at least 5 days since he was locked up. Although he didn't have any way to confirm, he could tell the approximate amount of time he spent locked up fairly well, so yes, he was positively dying at the moment, and it was anything but pleasant. If he had to die, it could have at least been painless, but no, of course, even his death needed to be painful. Not to mention that 9 years old was way too young to die. Now that he thought about it, he would actually turn 10 soon, right? Well, it didn't really matter anyways, since was quite sure he would die in this dark, cramped space. Wonderful, dying from dehydration or something in a frickin' closet, a dirty one at that. Just wonderful, isn't it? No matter how he waited, he knew that no one would come, he knew it. But he couldn't help but hope that he would be saved. He had already given up on heroes long ago, but at that moment he thought that if one were to save him, he may start believing in them again. If a civilian were to save him, he would so anything to repay them. The same goes for villains, he would do anything they told him to. As long as someone saved him, he would do anything for them. Just as was about to give up, he heard the familiar sound of the lock to his closet open. Since hadn't heard any footsteps, he was at least sure it wasn't his foster parents. The light was blinding, and every part of his body hurt. Still, he was happy, so happy to see the man in front of him. He knew with one look that man was a hero. Sure, he looked shabby, but he was a hero nonetheless. Tears started spilling from his eyes. Finally, someone had come to save him. "Kid, can I carry you? You need immediate medical attention." His voice was gruff, but not unkind. To Hitoshi's ears it was so very comforting. He couldn't stop the tears from flowing even harder. Yes. Izuku's head was feeling a lot better than before, but that didn't mean it wasn't hurting at all. Thankfully, everything around him was silent, and there was no light either. It was truly miles better than the auction house. He didn't really have any time for those idle thoughts though. He needed to discover where they were brought, and he needed to start forming a plan to escape. He started off by searching for his Nichan first though. The room was dark, but he was still able to at least see a little bit. It wasn't perfect, but it was still better than nothing. As he searched, he realized that the room was small and didn't really have a bed. That was to be expected though, it just had nothing in general. Taking that into account, finding Himi-ni obviously wasn't really difficult. He quickly shook her awake to check if she was alright. It didn't really take long for her to wake up, and he was satisfied at finding no wounds on her body, or at least as much as he could see in the dark. As for him, he hadn't noticed it before, but his back hurt a little, probably from when he was slammed into the wall. He didn't regret it in the slightest though. It was better for him to be injured than Shachin, and he would have made the same decision all over again if he had to. He would never let those precious to him get injured as long as he could help it after all. He quickly hugged her, and as much as he wanted to just hug his Ni-chan, that wasn't really the reason he was doing this. He needed to tell her to not talk openly in this space as quickly as possible while not seeming too suspicious, and this was the beat way. Himi-ni, no matter what I tell you, don't let your expression change. He could feel her body stiffen in his arms, but he had no time to mind. This needed to get done quickly after all. She tightened her grip on him, which Izuku took as a sign to start. We can't talk freely in here. They probably have cameras, although we can't see them in the dark. Be careful with what you reveal. There might not be any, but it's better to be careful than sorry. He could feel tears starting to wet his clothes, and that in turn made tears start falling from his eyes as well. He knew it was dangerous to live on the streets. He knew it pertinently well, but he still gave her that idea. Of course, the logical part of his mind was aware that she would have become homeless at one point or another. It didn't really matter, even if he hadn't told her to drink his blood, she wouldn't have been able to contain her need for it for too long before snapping. Telling her to not drink it was essentially the same as starving her. He was aware that it wasn't really his fault, but he still couldn't help but blame himself. Besides, even if becoming homeless hadn't been his fault, not being strong enough to protect her surely was. Tears wouldn't stop flowing, and soon enough, they both became sobbing messes. Fortunately, their tears didn't stop them from hearing loud footsteps nearing their door. Living on the streets did hone their skills at detecting people who are approaching them, although Izuku was quite sure that hearing him could have been done by anyone with how loud his footsteps were. Judging by what he could hear, the person in question was very likely to be overweight, although another possibility would be for him to simply be a giant. The first one seemed more likely to Izuku. Dread pooled in his stomach. What if they were going to hurt his sister? Would he be able to protect her? He certainly did pick up some skills on the streets to survive, but would it be enough? He was quite sure it wouldn't be. He was still weaker than his Ni-chan after all. Not to mention that living on the streets doesn't really help in getting the nutrients one needs to grow up properly. He wasn't going to complain though, his situation could have been far worse. He was snapped out of his thoughts by the sound of a lock opening. Nice, this door even had a lock. How was he supposed to break out of the room when the time comes? Well, he'd have to wait for an opportunity where they're both outside. Regardless, at the moment, he needed to concentrate on the problem at hand and not a future one. He could see rays of light entering the room as the door opened. In front of them stood a slightly overweight man. He was quite tall and well. The clothes he was wearing seemed to be expensive, but it didn't help the man make his face attractive. Although he wasn't exactly bald, he seemed to be already losing his hair, which was black with some gray strands, most likely due to age. He had no apparent mutation, meaning that his quirk was most likely either an emitter or transformation one. His build didn't seem like one of a person who fights in close combat, meaning he was probably either a long range or just didn't participate in the combat part at all. He was someone he and Himi-ni should be able to take care of. His ugly face seemed familiar to Izuku, but he couldn't quite put a name to it. Regardless, the man himself didn't look peculiarly strong, however the guard behind him would probably be too difficult to take care of. Judging by his behavior towards the fat man, he must be either his attendant or bodyguard, the second being more likely since Izuku suspects him of having a strength enhancement quirk. Most people with such quirks have a tendency of building muscle, and that man sure had enough of it. He didn't hear his footsteps when they were walking down the corridor either, meaning he probably has stealth training. That guy seemed strong, and Izuku doubted they would be able to get him even if they somehow managed to defeat the fatty before that guy could take action. That in and of itself was very unlikely as well. Well, it seems you're awake already. Unfortunately though, you need to be put to sleep again since I have some business with you. Kenji. After a second, the man started approaching the siblings. Of course, Izuku put himself between him and his Ni-chan. Even while knowing it wouldn't be enough to protect her, he still had to try, even if it was hopeless. Fortunately, the guard only grabbed the boy by the wrist, and soon after he could feel something hitting the back of his neck. Everything turned black. As soon as he woke up, Izuku was assaulted with light, although this time, they didn't hurt him after the initial shock and blinking. Strange, his concussion should still be there. Did a lot of time pass without him knowing? Did they perhaps have a healer? They're quite rare and sought after though. Well, there's no use mulling over it, he should check out his situation first. As soon as the boy attempted to move, he felt something tying him down. He could move none of his limbs, and there was something tight around his waist and neck. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't move. Upon further inspection, he realized that he was probably lying on something made out metal. It was cold and hard, but not in the same way rock was. It was extremely smooth as well. The things that were used to bind him to the table were likely made of metal or a similar material as well. If he were to be honest with himself, no matter what he did, he wouldn't be able to get out. Even though he knew this, he still tried hard to get those things off of his limbs, and the only result was a familiar red liquid wetting his wrists and ankles. It was no use. Since he had given up on freeing himself, he looked around the room, well, as much as he could, given that he was bound to a metal table. The room was entirely white, and not even a speck of dust could be found. He was surrounded by multiple machines he had never seen or heard of before. The room looked somewhat similar to one you would find in a hospital, a surgery room to be precise, and that realization made him very uncomfortable. A soft click could be heard from where he was, probably a door being unlocked. Izuku heard familiar footsteps approaching him alongside multiple others. As soon as they entered his field of vision, he started analyzing them. There was an old man with multiple younger people by his side. Next to them stood the man who came to take him out of his cell. Probably the man who bought Izuku and his Ni-chan. None of them had apparent mutations either, making it difficult to deduce their quirks. They were dressed like doctors, which only made his bad feeling grow stronger. He wasn't injured anywhere, and even if he were, he doubted that man would dedicate an entire team of doctors to his health. The only way for him to get a doctor would probably be if he had a fatal injury. The man had paid too much to buy Izuku and just let him die. Or at least he hoped so. Regardless, the situation really didn't look good for him. He had come up with a million scenarios in his head for what all of this was about, one more ridiculous than the other, trying to deny the logical explanation his brain had formed on its own accord. He knew that denying it would bring him nowhere, it wouldn't change his situation, wouldn't change their plans, but he didn't want to admit to what was about to happen. In these moments, he wished he were dumb, he wished he were innocent, he wished he didn't know what was to come. If he hadn't researched as much as he did, if he hadn't been as curious as he was, he might not have had to know, he might not have had to be aware of what was to come. Unfortunately though, he did know, he did research, he was aware. To them, he was nothing more than a lab rat. Shoto slowly opened his eyes, confused and disoriented. He couldn't really remember what exactly happened before he fell asleep. He was playing around with Izu and Himini, and then someone attacked them. As soon as the realization dawned on him, Shoto shot up and looked around him wildly. What awaited him though wasn't the familiar, cozy place he had started to consider his home. What he saw was a room that brought back painful memories, memories of fire, of fists punching his guts, of blood, of pain, of terror. He was there again. He was in his training room. The door shot open with a loud bang which caused the boy to flinch, much to the person who was entering's displeasure. His father, in all his flaming trash bag's glory, tesked and looked at Shoto as though he was no better than a dog. "I see I'll have to reteach you all the basics. I knew being around that wimp would rub off on you. Stand up," he said with a clear disgust as much on his face as in his voice. Even while completely confused, Shoto knew better than to go against his father. The outcome was never good when he did. His immediate obedience brought a pleased smirk on the man's face, much to Shoto's own displeasure, one that he obviously didn't show. It was as if the 2 years spent outside were but a mere dream, everything was the same. His father, the training room, the one-sided fight, the pain, and most of all him. He wanted to believe it wasn't true, but nothing had changed. He was still weak, way too weak, so weak he couldn't even protect the people he loved. Was it really worth it? Was going against his father, no, this pathetic excuse of a human being, really worth losing everything? Losing his family, his friends, his soulmate? The answer was simple. No, it wasn't. Much to that man's surprise, Shoto activated his left side. He used his fire. He fought tooth and nail with everything he got. He burned him with his fire. He pierced him with his ice. He lost eventually, but he did with dignity. Oh, how right Izuku was, the sight of the room full of fire and ice, the sight of that trash, injured, burned, bleeding, it was beautiful. His flames and his ice, he couldn't help but admire their beauty. Shachin, why do you never use your fire? The cute little boy next to him asked. It had been 7 months since they met, and Shoto had never loved someone as much as he did him. Everything about him was perfect. Be it his big shining emerald eyes or his soft curly hair. The freckles scattered on his face beautifully, and the way his whole face lit up when he smiled. His cheeks were so soft he would like to pinch them, even just once. All that was holding him back was the idea that pinching them might hurt him, because the little boy looked so very fragile curled up his arms, as if he could disappear at any given moment. Shoto's thoughts continued to wander, and even he himself was aware that he was only doing so to delay his answer. It seemed that Izu understood as well, since he just silently leaned into Shoto, waiting for him to be ready, even if it took years to get there. Still, Shoto loved Izu, and he knew the little boy would answer any questions given to him, so he would do the same. He would trust him and tell him everything he wanted to know. He would never keep any secret from him. I don't want to use his flames. They only ever hurt people. They hurt Dabai Niai, they hurt Mom, and they even killed your mom. I don't want to become like him, Izu. I don't want to become a monster. The boy who was previously curled up on his lap sat up straight and looked him in the eyes. Shoto couldn't see even a hint of disappointment or anger. They were filled with determination and love. It made Shoto feel safe. Tears started spilling from his eyes like a waterfall. It was so unlike him, but it felt good. It felt as though everything he had bottled up in him was let loose. He felt lighter in the small boy's embrace. It was so warm and comforting, it felt good. Shoto lost count of how long he sobbed into the child's shoulder, but honestly, it didn't matter. Izu didn't speak or move, he just stayed there for him, letting him spill out all of his well-hidden feelings. All he did was share his warmth. They sat there, enjoying the peace, and quite comfortably. The smaller boy had long since returned to being curled up in the taller one's arms and chest. Unexpectedly, the silence was broken by the younger child's soothing voice. You know, I don't think that fire is inherently bad. Sure, my mom and I were hurt by fire and so were you, but imagine I had inherited a fire quirk from my father and I was the one who told you about it. I don't think you would have told me that my flames are my father's, so let me tell you this, your flames are yours and you get to decide what you should do with it. Your father doesn't have control over your actions. Yes, fire can hurt people, of course it can, we both know and experienced it, but so can every other quirk. Your ice could impale someone and kill them. Himini could empty someone of all their blood. Even All Might could use his quirk to do bad things. For him, killing and hurting people would be as easy as squishing an ant. Yet, both of them want to use it to help people. I don't see why your fire couldn't be used to do so as well. I think you would make a fantastic hero one day. The little boy explained in a soft voice, as if unsure of whether he should tell Shoto his thoughts honestly or not. Still, even while being soft, his voice was filled with determination as well, determination to help Shoto and get his thoughts across. I guess you're right. When he thought of it this way, everything seemed so simple, so obvious. He already knew that Izu had more insight than he could ever dream to have, but this had yet again showed him why he really thought that way. His previous words now seemed quite ridiculous in retrospect. He wasn't the problem, his father was. His quirk wasn't the problem, the way his father used his fire was. He couldn't help but scoff at how painfully obvious everything now seemed. All his previous worries now seemed utterly ridiculous. Yes, he might not be able to use them like he would use his ice just yet. Yes, he might not be able to use them while fighting just yet. However, at least he had accepted them as his own, had accepted that he would use them to climb to the very top and save as many people as he possibly could. He might not be there just yet, but he was sure that in the future, although not a near one, he would be able to proudly stand in front of his father and claim them as his. Yeah, you are right. He could hear a soft giggle coming from his chest, and when he looked down, he saw Izu smiling at him. His smile was so very bright, so very innocent, so very precious, even while it still held shadows underneath it all. He couldn't help but swear that he would fulfill any wish the boy had, no matter what it was, no matter what it required of him. He would do anything to keep this boy safe and happy, no matter what. As if to put this very vow to challenge, the boy asked, in a voice even meeker than before. Can you show me your flames? Shoto got stunned for a second. Yes, his flames weren't his father's. Yes, he wouldn't use them to hurt people, but to save them. Yes, he had accepted these facts, but Izu was still afraid of fire. Shoto didn't want to hurt him, he had vowed to protect him. As if reading his thoughts, Izu quickly added, I know it's a lot to ask of you, but I think it might be okay if it's your flames. He breathed in to calm down, which he really needed. I can't stay afraid of fire forever if I want to be a hero. Sure, I might not really be frightened by it, but my body clearly thinks differently, meaning that it would hinder me while fighting. Besides, if I had to trust anyone with using fire in front of me, it would be you. Of course, if you don't want to, I understand. I know it's a selfish request, but you're the only person I think could help me become accustomed to it again. At this blatant show of trust, Shoto could feel his face heat up. It felt good to know that Izu trusted him so much, that the amount of trust the older boy placed in the smaller one was returned. He knew he would be hurt if Izu reacted badly, even if he shouldn't be. Still, if it was to help him, Shoto would be willing to get hurt 1,000 times over. All right, I'll do it. Shoto smiled at the green-haired boy, a smile that was returned with one that shined 100 times brighter than his. That was all the encouragement he needed to light a small flame in the palm of his hand. Truth be told, it felt good to use his flames. It was as if a warmth was spreading all over his body to welcome him, something he hadn't felt in years. However, this feeling was put out as quickly as it came when he realized that Izu was still sitting in his lap. The taller boy looked over to him so quickly his neck might have as well snapped. He didn't see any of the nausea he braced himself for. Instead, Izu's eyes were big and sparkling as he observed the flame in Shoto's hands. The boy was surprised, but even more so, he was happy, really happy. The young boy looked up at him, eyes still sparkling, his face adorned with the most gorgeous smile he had ever seen. They're beautiful. Izu Himini, just wait for me. I'm going to become strong, the strongest actually. I'm going to become a hero and find you. I'm going to protect you no matter what it takes. Just do your best to survive until the time comes. I promise to become your hero. Dabai was ecstatic. His first day at work had been really good. He already knew that beforehand, but his employers were really nice. No one would take a job at their restaurant since they didn't have the means to pay them a lot, but it was more than enough to satisfy Dabai. Sure, he and his sibling wouldn't get an apartment or anything like that anytime soon, but it was at least enough to feed them. His employers were a sweet old couple who run a restaurant. It certainly wasn't well-known or anything, but the food looked really delicious. It's a pity that not a lot of people know of it. If they have enough money, he should try to go there with his siblings sometimes. He was sure Zuko would enjoy their katsudon. Actually, he'll be able to enjoy it without visiting their restaurant since the couple gave him any leftovers they had, which was really sweet. Dabai couldn't express just how grateful he was towards them. It's just that directly eating at a restaurant was better. He arrived at their home before he even knew it. As he made his way to the main room, it was strangely quiet. It left a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. It was never this quiet. Usually he would hear Himi's giggling and chipper voice while she talked. He would hear Zuko laughing or mumbling away on ways to improve or use their quirks in the future. He would even occasionally hear Shoto, who doesn't speak a lot, talking and laughing with them. This wasn't right. If it had been any other day, he might have dismissed it as them having gone to sleep early. But today was his first day at work, and he was sure they would have stayed up to ask him about how everything went. Something wasn't right. He quickly made his way inside only to find their home empty. There were clear traces of a fight, but his sibling were nowhere to be found. That's when it hit him. They weren't here anymore. They could have been kidnapped or even killed, and Dabai wouldn't be able to find them. He wouldn't be able to because he was weak, he was powerless. The teen fell to knees and all could do was cry over all he had lost. Chapter 14, Hiatus. Chapter text. I'm sorry for doing this when I'm still just starting the story, but I'll be taking a break. Some SHT happened in my life, and after it got better, I started writing this story. Now it has come back to haunt me, and I can't really find the motivation to write anymore. I hope you won't miss the story too much, but I doubt you will anyways since it's probably just one of those typical distractions while you're waiting for your favorites to update. Once again, I'm sorry, but I hope it'll get better quickly so that I won't make you wait for too long. Until then, I hope you won't miss me too much.